What is going on, everybody? It is your guy, Mr. Motivator, here. Finally, it is that time. It is September 19th, 2020, and this is the APNC Forward Virtual Summit. What's going on, everybody? Yes. As you know, we've been planning this for quite a while, and we're so used to being in your space. For years we've had the APNC conference all over the country, and of course, COVID has made us have to go virtual, but that's okay because we're still going to bring you the content, we're still going to bring you the people, and we are still going to bring you the love. So without any further ado, I want to thank everybody that's watching today. Again, my name is Mr. Motivator. Let me just show off the shirt. Let me just show off the shirt that I'm wearing. I am loved, one of the official FCN products. I am loved, and know that you are loved too. Now, let's just get to the point why we are here. We are here because we wanted to make sure that no matter what, we uplifted you. And the purpose of the Alumni Powerhouse Networking Conference is to move forward. This is an expert-led free virtual summit, and it's all about navigating healthy and racially navigated charged pandemic. Whether you've been in foster care like myself and many others, this summit will help you try to carry on in life. So we're not saying that you had to experience foster care. Just know that everybody that is included in this, that has worked hard, has had foster care experience. So just know that we are great. Just know that we are loved. Just know that we are powerful beyond measure. So we have, again, some wonderful things lined up for you. We have some amazing speakers. We have an entrepreneurship panel. We have a resilient community panel. We have an activism panel. We have an education and career panel. And we have I think we've brought some of the top experts in for those particular panels. So we ask you to stay with us all day. There will be some breaks. You have a chance to actually ask some questions during our time today. But listen, we have some treats for you. All right. So just a little things I wanted to mention. I want everybody that is listening and that is watching, if you are not an FCN member, please go to fcnfoundation.org, fcnfoundation.org. You can be an alumni of foster care or you can have a organization. We would love you to become a member because we have some gems. We have job opportunities that gets posted, that we post all over the country. So this is a network of everyone that we get together, right? So if you are a member, there are some exclusive things that you have privy to. So I encourage everybody to become a member of the FCN Foundation. It is free. It is free. It is free. It is free. Let me say it again. It is free 99. All right. So it doesn't cost anything to join. So if you like those insider deals, those insider things, become a member. All right, become a member. If you have questions during the day, during any of the panels, be sure to hit up the chat box. Hit up the chat box. You can hit up the wherever you're watching from, whether it's Facebook, IG, YouTube. We will see your questions and we will definitely get them answered. Also, like the Facebook page, like the IG page, like the YouTube channel, because we are there. We have a lot of content. And if you want to stay connected, we want you to stay connected. We want to be connected to you. So make sure you like all of those pages. Now, where will we be without donations? Right? So we're asking if you feel it in your heart to, again, continue to support the cause. We're asking you to text foster support to 44321. All right. And you can do it anytime you want to, or you can go to the website again, fcnfoundation.org. And listen, all we need is just your support. Just continue to support us as we support you. We were able to, through this COVID situation, offer support to and actually COVID relief grants for alumni that are in school, alumni that plan on going to school. So we were able to give away some dollars in this moment. So we're not able to do that without your support or without your donations. So even if it's as small as $5, we love it, and we support it, and we support you. So there's some wonderful things happening in the world of foster care. But today, we're going to blow up the spot. So without any further ado, I just want to introduce some of our panelists that's going to be on for us today. Again, we have later on today in our entrepreneurship panel, we have Christian Benjamin, who is the CEO of Story MKTG, who is a wonderful individual, a very smart guy. Let me tell you, this man moves and shakes, and he is a master of the market. We also have Steve Biondolillo, who is, again, another crafty, smart individual when we talk about entrepreneurship, because he is the founder and president of Biondolillo and Associates. We also have Charity Chandler Cole, who is on our activist panel, and she is a social justice advocate. And let me tell you, she is a powerful, powerful, powerful woman. And we also have on our educational and career panel, we have Ashley Jamat. Let me tell you, she is the director of strategic partnership at Pivotal. And also, last but not least, to round out our day, we have the amazing Dr. Kizzy Lopez, who is the assistant professor of social work at Fresno Pacific University. Let me tell you, we have some things lined up, so please stay tune in, because it's going to be great. So giving a few shout outs to those of you that are watching either through Facebook or YouTube, we have Vanessa Galloway. Hey, how you doing? Angela. Yes, she is on. She is watching. We have Ivory Bennett, who is watching. Yes. So we have a lot of people that are going to be tuned in today. And let me tell you, take notes. Take notes from these experts. We want you to take notes. And again, ask questions, because without us, without a community, we cannot move forward. So that's one of our themes, move forward. Now, how many of y'all, by the show of hands, and of course I can't see them, but you can put them in the chat box, enjoyed the opening? It got me hyped. That's all I'm going to say. I'm over here dancing in my seat. It got me hyped. So what a feel. And I just want to thank my sister, Carmen Fletcher, who is some of the brains behind some of the artwork you see, a lot of the music things that are put together. So I got to give her a shout out. And let me give you another shout out. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my other sister, Shalita O'Neill. You know, this has been a vision and dream of hers for years. Every year we do this, it gets better and better and better. And the fact that we are now here, being able to reach the masses virtually, that means that we cannot be stopped. We can't be stopped because of her vision. So with that being said, I want to bring up our first panel. We are going to be talking about education and career. And in that moment, we have, again, the amazing Dr. Kizzy Lopez and Ashley Jamat. Ladies, what's going on?
Good morning.
Well, good morning. First off, I want everyone to kind of get to know who you are. So if you, one by one, of course, give just a brief synopsis of who you are and, you know, some of your background, that'd be great. Then we'll just hit off with the questions.
I'll let you go first.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Lopez. Hey, everybody, good morning. So excited to be here with you. My name is Ashley Jamat. I'm myself too. I'm a former foster youth, and I am coming to you all from California. So I am somewhere close to Hayward, Oakland area. So really excited to be here with you all. Had a really rough start out to life. But then realized that through connections and partnerships and alignments that I was able to change my life and turn my life around. Attended San Jose State University for undergrad, went to Mill to get my MBA, and realized that this Alumni Powerhouse Network and all of its amazing people, I had to be a part of it. So now just building partnerships between Pivotal, the company that I work for, and our Alumni Powerhouse Network. So super excited to be here with you all.
Awesome. It's crazy because I was just in Oakland a week ago, and I was doing some work with Alameda County. So yeah, see, we could have hooked up, man. But it's good to know I got an alumni sister in Oakland that I can reach out to. All right, Dr. Lopez.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So my name is Dr. Kizzy Lopez. Like many of the people who are here today, I'm also an alumni of CARE. I currently serve as an assistant professor in the School of Social Work, but I've been in higher education for over 13 years. And so prior to my role as an assistant professor, I actually helped start a campus-based program for students who've experienced foster care or homelessness at a four-year public university, and did that for 10 years. I'm passionate, committed to helping improve the educational outcomes of young people in foster care. And so now I commit my time to do research around this topic, but did it as a practitioner for 10 years. So shout out to Shalita and the whole team for inviting me. I've been wanting to come to this conference for years, and so I'm so glad and so happy to be here. And I'm happy to learn from you all and share whatever wisdom I've gathered along my journey as well. So glad to be here. Good morning.
Awesome. So the purpose of this particular panel, we want to help teach people how to develop in a high yielding post-secondary experience, regardless of education type, and helping them develop those skills and strategies to join a flourishing and sometimes uncertain workforce, right? So the first question I have for you ladies is, as we prepare for post-secondary education, what is the best advice you could give for, let's just talk about youth aging out of care, because we know that we all know the numbers. They say that less than 3% graduate with a four-year degree, but we also know that studies stop at a certain age, and there are a number of young people, are now adults, who've experienced foster care that get their degrees after 25 or after 30. But as they age out of care and they go into post-secondary, what are some first thoughts that you have to help them navigate through those different arenas?
I'm happy to jump in. As simple as this may sound, it's not easy. First, you have to know that you can go to college. If that's what you want, it's an option for you. Absolutely. And, the road would not be easy. It took me 10 years to get a four-year degree. I had a lot of things going on in my life. I started off college homeless, and I was taking a bird bath at the Taco Bell that was across the street from the community college that I went to. And, when I had the backpack on my back when I went to school, I had nothing in there but the hygiene products and food that I stole. I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. But I showed up every day, and students that want it bad enough, I say 70% of success is just showing up. I passed one class that semester, but I passed one class. And I kept showing up, and I kept trying to figure it out and talking to people. And I realized that I couldn't go at the same pace as everybody else. I had to go part-time to be successful, because the reality is that I had to work. And so know that you can do it. You're not in competition with everybody else. Your journey is your journey. And so if you want to go to college, know that you can, and know that there are lots of resources out there. I'm much older than probably a lot of people on this call. And there weren't as many resources when I was going to college, but there are lots of resources out there. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of those resources with folks on the conference today.
I'll definitely jump in, and I agree with Dr. Lopez that you have to move at your own pace. And you also have to understand that and be willing to try to create a network or a safety group of people that can help you, to support you, because it's not going to be easy. And the thing that I found out as well is that you have to take care of your mental health, right? If you, for instance, when I was in undergrad, I for a time too experienced homelessness. But in that, I had to find the resources on my campuses. And now that everything is virtual, people are using different platforms. I know here, some of our community colleges are using Blackboard or different things like that. And people have these open door, virtual door policies. Figure out who's doing what on these campuses, and figure out how you can get attached to the resources so that you know how to take care of your mind, body, and your spirit. Also, try to figure out who has housing, different things that you can get connected to, food offerings, housing, transportation, even though we're not going anywhere because we're in shelter in place. But see how you can get connected to these things. And I'm excited to hear about Dr. Lopez's resources, and we do have some resources here too in Alameda County that I can post as well.
So that's amazing. I was just, as you guys were talking, ladies were talking, I was thinking about just my journey. I had the esteemed opportunity to attend a historically black college and university, and my first year, and mind you, I didn't plan on going to school. After I graduated from high school, I was in my apartment because that's, they emancipated me, and I was working, and I was like, this is it. But I had somebody kind of yanking on my coattail saying, this is not it for you. And, there's been stories in the news about parents paying off college admissions and people going to trial. And so the question that comes to mind is how to pick a good school, right? Of course, we all don't have parents that have that type of influence. But how did you pick the universities or colleges that you attended? What changed? What made you gravitate to those universities?
So I can speak to why I attended San Jose State University. I attended San Jose State University because I knew that there were services in particular for foster youth. Our EOPS program was amazing. Our Guardian Scholars program was amazing. There was financial aid support. There were people at the school designated to support foster youth. And somebody was just like, yo, check this out. You might want to go talk to these people. And I was like, man, like, okay, whatever. Like, my GPA is not that great. Didn't really know what a FAFSA was. Couldn't figure out where am I going to get parent information from? Where? Who? I don't know how this works, but I took a chance. I went up there. I took a chance. I called the people. And I was like, I don't really know how this goes, but let's try. Like, what do I do? Can somebody help me and support me? And they were open to that. Like Dr. Lopez said, if you show up, if you try, if you call, if you reach out, there will be people. And in the Alumni Powerhouse Network, if you call me, I'm an answer. Like, there are people here that want you to be successful. So I picked San Jose State due to the resources and somebody giving me that tip and being like, you can do it.
Dr. Lopez?
How do you pick a good school is a tricky question for me. I think there are very prestigious schools, and colleges are set in a hierarchy. And the more prestigious of a school you go to, the larger network that you have and the prestige behind your name. Those things are helpful, but they're not everything. If you want to learn, you're going to do it, period. Now, in my particular situation, and I think it's important to share it because, at the end, people see the end product. I'm a professor at a university, but my journey was rough. I failed out of community college because I was not doing what I'm telling you all to do. Ask questions, ask for help. I didn't do it. And it took me a very long time, and I paid the price. I was also 18 and fought my biological parents for custody of my 8-year-old sister. So I'm 18 in college with an 8-year-old. And so my priority was caring for my sister. So I picked schools that allowed me to earn a living, right? And so I attended schools locally and that were geared towards working adults. Even though I was 18, I had the life of an older working adult. And so when I left community college, I actually went to a trade school. I was so beat down. To fail out of community college was a huge hit to my confidence. So I went to a trade school to become a dental assistant, actually, so that I could provide for my sister. And it was a 14-month program. The structure of it allowed me to excel because it was every day the same schedule versus if you go to a traditional school. Fast forward, I got married really young, still married today to the same wonderful man, but we decided to have children. So, and I fostered some biological family members. So I'm 23 years old with 3 and working on the 4th child. Okay, busy. Okay. My family was my priority. So I picked schools around what was my priority, which was my family and making a living. So I did not go to a prestigious university. I went to National University, but I did really well there. And I was able to use my network, which Ashley talked about. Using that network in my community. So I started to get involved in professional organizations in my community, which really helped me elevate my standing in my community, get me networked with people. And honestly, I was able to get a lot of employment that way. And so when you think about what is the best school or how to get into a good school, one, get all the free money you can. That's
because it's out here. Because it's out here.
Get out here, get all the free money you can, and then really understand what your priorities are, and choose schools that are going to help you be successful. Right? Just like Ashley did, she went and asked a question, and she decided on San Jose State because they had the resources there to help her be successful. So that's how you choose the best school, is understanding who you are, what you need, and what school is going to be a fit for that, and get that money.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me at Central State University was just connecting to someone who I felt could be a mentor. And that was my main college professor, Dr. Moses, who was my percussion instructor. And he also became the chair of the music department. And I think if I didn't have that connection, it would have been a lot harder for me. And it was hard anyway. Especially my freshman year, going to school, not knowing anybody, not having a car. And mind you, my school was in the sticks, of Southwest Ohio. And you had to connect to people. But again, if I didn't willingly connect and find friends and do that, I think it would have been a lot harder. So how easy or how hard was it connecting to people just that first, few months of school? And how important is it to do that?
It's everything. That's why I failed, because I was too prideful to talk to anybody. I thought I knew it all. And so it wasn't until I fell on my face that the second time I went to trade school, I was like, I need help. I mean, I honestly, I was like, I need help. I'm not successful on my own. And so I really relied heavily on my academic advisor, and she saw me through the process. And I think, to your point, that connection it's a lifeline. It's critical, and it's everything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Dr. Lopez. I think that when we think about higher education or training programs or community college, it is critical to, one, understand yourself, right? And understand that it might be scary. It might be a little bit of runaround. It might be rubbing you the wrong way or showing up a particular type of way. But that is important, because another thing that I started to realize in college is that your image is important. The way you show up is important. Are you on time for things? Can you hold a conversation? How do you present yourself? All these things that I really didn't or really wasn't aware of became important. And that added pressure, right? Because you're like, well, how do I do all these things? Nobody's really taught me how to do these things. But I think, like you said, having a mentor, having somebody that can sit down with you and give you the tea and keep it solid, like,
yeah.
So you were late the other day. Cut it out. Either get here or don't come.
At all.
Let's stop playing the games. Either turn in your homework assignment, go see a tutor, or you need to drop my class. So it's like having those people that keep you accountable and hold you in high regard all the way around, as a person, as a student, as somebody who has something to contribute to the campus life or to your program, your training program, is important.
But but think about that too. As I'm hearing what you're saying, just as former foster youth, just even myself, it took a lot for me to let this man in that I didn't know. Right? It's like I wanted to trust him. I wanted to trust what he said, and that he had his what do you say, that thing that his best interest. He knew he had my best interest, but because I've had foster parents and caseworkers that have lied and not shown up like they were supposed to, you just had to be willing to open up. But I know that's also hard for a lot of us. So how easy was it for you, or how long did it take for you to open up to that mentor or that connection on campus?
It took me a little while. And I think that I definitely I think I was like 17, 18 at a university.
Mhm.
You know what I was doing, living my best life, spending all my financial aid, just whatever I wanted to do.
Were we all?
Yes, but it took me a little while, and I feel like there was this like push, right? Like I'm constantly pushing people to see, like, okay, are you really gonna show up? Okay, well, you said this the other day, so you gonna do that for me or not?
Right.
And the people that were in my life were consistent. They consistently showed up for me. They consistently pushed me to grow, to be better. But it took like a year for me to really get acclimated to campus and really start to wrap my mind around, like, there are actual people here that I can connect with and who see me differently from how I see myself. And they see the best parts of me, even though I come with all this stuff. They actually care about me. But it took me a little while. Like Dr. Lopez said, I was very rambunctious, a little ratchet, but you know.
Said a little ratchet. They know
got it together now.
Nothing wrong with a little. Nothing wrong with a little. Do you want to add to that, Dr. Lopez?
Yeah, you know, one of the things when I first met my advisor, I did not trust her and I didn't open up. And for me, the first level of trusting somebody for me was their competency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, you're professional. I need you to be professional and follow through on the competency pieces of it. And so for me, that's what drew me in, because she started to be consistent. Her advice was solid around academics. So then I began to little by little open up about what was happening in my life so she could better help me navigate additional layers of policies and systems because of kind of the unique situation I was in as someone who was in care and had guardianship of a child that's so young. And, you know, I want to touch on something that Ashley said earlier that I think is critical and I really want to highlight for young people. And I wish somebody would have told me this when I was at community college. I didn't learn it until my second go around in trade school. When you do find that connection, which is so key, your reputation is important. Mm. Because I had a connection with somebody and I didn't want to disappoint her, because I wasn't ready yet to I didn't care about myself as much, but I didn't want to disappoint her. I'm just being honest. That's where I was. Yeah. And so I showed up every day. I got straight A's. And in fact, I actually won like a national award because of some dental assisting award, because of the fact that I had done so well in school and had overcome so much. And I began to tell people my story, right? And I made sure that my reputation was solid with the faculty there. And I can't emphasize that enough. I was the first person in my school to get a job. In my master's program, I was the first person to get a job because I put in the work around my reputation and networking. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Yeah, and networking is important. I mean, I don't think anybody would be where they are if they didn't network.
That's right.
You know, and that's the whole purpose of this conference. You know, we've been doing it for years and being able to connect with so many people across the country because of this networking aspect. But you touched on something about your master's. And, you know, one of the questions, and this actually came up in the chat box, there's a young lady who is, again, a former foster youth who just actually graduated with her bachelor's degree in social work last August. And she says she often feels like the imposter and that she doesn't belong. So her question was, how does she overcome the imposter syndrome? And have we experienced that?
Yeah, I see Ashley shaking your head. Did you want to start on that first, or?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about it. Yes, I definitely have experienced the imposter syndrome. I think more so in graduate school, because it was a little bit different for me. It was like, okay, so now I'm in a different environment with people that look extremely different from me at one of the best business schools out there. So I was able to take classes at High School of Business at UC Berkeley and at Mills College in Oakland, California. When I tell you I was literally shaking in my boots, sitting in class at UC Berkeley, Like, what? How did I get here? They're going to take all the money away. They're going to find out that I'm not as smart as I think I am. Like, it was scary. It was definitely scary. But I think that I had to reassess myself and kind of think about, why am I feeling this way? What feelings of inadequacy are coming up for me? How am I going to handle these feelings? I think when we think about holistically, I think that's the approach that I took to it, like mind, body, and spirit. What is my body physical reaction happening? Spiritually, what's going on with me? And then mentally, how can I get everything back into alignment? Because I do deserve to be here in this classroom learning accounting. I do deserve to sit at these tables because, like Dr. Lopez said, we put in a lot of work to get to where we are. And there's so many things that we've overcome, regardless of being in foster care, regardless of any of that. Everybody has a story. So I think that it's the alignment that has to happen within mind, body, and spirit. And you got to really sit and think about, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like I don't belong? And unpack that a little bit. And that's hard and it's scary and it hurts because it brings up stuff. At least for me, it did. But it also helped me to understand that I've overcome a lot.
You know, to add to what Ashley's saying, I think, how do I want to say this? I think imposter syndrome is a little good. And I don't remember where I saw this in an article, but you know, people who have imposter syndrome are the people who are pushing themselves a little, pushing themselves to the edge. And if you're not pushing yourself, if you're complacent, you're not going to experience imposter syndrome, right? And the imposter syndrome is really kind of like doubting yourself. Do I really belong? And the answer is yes. Like Ashley said, you absolutely belong. But that insecurity comes from the fact that you're pushing your boundaries a little bit. You're becoming a little uncomfortable. And when I remind myself of the fact that I'm starting to doubt myself, I'm like, oh, this is good. I'm pushing myself. I'm taking myself to next levels, right? Because you don't feel that if you are complacent, if you're just not doing anything. So I actually don't always see imposter syndrome as a bad thing, as long as you don't let it control you, as long as you push back, as long as you're able to reframe it to say, yay, me, I'm pushing myself, right? And I'm not going to sit in this doubt. This is good. I'm pushing myself, right? And you let that doubt go and you keep working hard, because most of the people in my circle who've achieved a lot of things in terms of getting their doctorate, when I meet with them and they learn about my background, our background, they're like, wow, you're amazing. Most people don't survive what we've been through, much less thrive. So please do not doubt yourself at any time. You're amazing for getting where you're at today, for all the things that you've overcome. And so you're able to navigate kind of multiple worlds. Know that you are deserving and don't let imposter syndrome take you over. See it as a key that you're doing next level things.
You know, one verse comes to mind. I'm an avid Jay fan. I'm an avid Jay-Z fan. And one of his verses, one of the things that he always says is, show them how to move in a room full of vultures. That's like that's always stuck with me in my journey from, you know, college to business and businesses. And that's one thing I think a lot of us have a mindset that we have to control and we have to kind of take on, because even though everybody's not out to get us, there are certain rooms that we should really learn how to navigate strongly, right? Whether you know it, whether you know about that arena or not, whether you feel like you have the experience. So with that being said, let's quickly talk about career development. And I know there's a lot, kind of speaking to that imposter syndrome, I know there's a lot of us that are coming up that might not feel like they have adequate experience for certain jobs. You know, so trying to gain entry into certain fields. So what would be your advice, or how do you, what do you do to gain these experiences to kind of get that job that you want?
Did you want to start, Ashley? Okay. So I think for me, if I'm going to focus on the school aspect of it, because that's where I started. And so developing your professional career actually starts in school. One with the reputation that we've talked about already, and then one internships and apprenticeships. So I'm going to talk about them in two different parts here. I tell students this: that when you're in class, don't take yourself seriously and don't take your classmates for granted. So when you're in class, think about yourself and your professor one is your colleague, your classmates is your colleagues. The reason why is when I was in my master's program, I was one of the first people, I think after 5 months, I got a professional job as an academic counselor, and it was a 2-year program. And classmates don't take themselves seriously. And so what happened was eventually my classmates needed an internship and I was like their indirect supervisor. Well, those people who failed me on group projects, well, guess what? I'm not vouching for you, right? And so how do you develop your professional network? Take your classmates seriously. Take your professor seriously. Take yourself seriously. Show up to class like it's a job, because those are the people who are going to write you letters of recommendation. And you are networking with the people in your class because they're all graduating with degrees, hopefully, and they're going to be in the field and you all will be supporting each other. And so I don't know, for me, the way I see professional development is start now where you're at. And make sure that you are participating in internships and apprenticeships. I started volunteering internship at the beginning of my master's program instead of waiting till the end. That's why I got a job. And let me just say too, I live in a predominantly white community and I'm a Black woman. And the field that I wanted to get in was very competitive. And so I know if everybody's doing 2, I got to do 4. If everybody's waiting 2 years to get their internship, that's mandatory. I got to volunteer. So when they start their internship, I already got 2 years on them. You understand what I'm saying? So I was taught by my biological dad when I was living with him, as a Black woman, I'm going to have it tough. So I'm going to have to work harder than the average person. And that's just what it is. You got to suck it up. So I'm always trying to assess what's happening in the field and what do I got to do to surpass everybody else. I mean, that's the way I move. So
there you go. Ashley.
Absolutely. I agree. I also would speak to opportunities on campus. Somebody posted a really good one, student government. So I was a part of the student government for San Jose State, and then I got a job in housing, working at housing at San Jose State. So then I was able again to be like, so that didn't really look right when I was a student. So I was able to change stuff for my fellow foster youth and for the students on campus. So seek out those opportunities. Dr. Lopez also talked about professional networks, right? So I'm a part of the 100 Black women of the Silicon Valley. I'm also a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Think of other places that you can find these networks that you would like to be a part of. I would also say use the career services, whatever career services are on your campus, check in with those people. Make sure your resume is tight. Make sure if you don't have experience and you have soft skills, you know how to translate that language so that it does show your aptitudes and the things that you are able to do. Speaking to what Dr. Lopez said as well, try to figure out, hey, Soror, try to figure out also too what kind of field you want to go into, right? It doesn't have to be solid, but like Dr. Lopez says, we got to work a little bit harder, a little bit smarter. So make sure that you kind of figure out what you want to tinker in a little bit. For me, I knew I like psych, but I didn't know that I liked the business side of psychology and the business side of the nonprofit sector. And try to get that exposure, right? Talk to different people. Also, talk to your department chairs. Your department chairs have a lot of information and a lot of resources.
They do. I know one thing that came to mind as you ladies were giving your answer was, I hear a lot of young people as we talk about, because I do a lot of life skills class here in Ohio, go Buckeyes. And I hear we talk about internships and externships, becoming employable, building your skill set to become employable. And when I explain externships, they'd be like, nah, you mean do something for no money? And I have to explain to them, I was also going to a career technical school while finishing up, my degree. And I had to do an externship for a year in a hospital. No money. No money. but the payoff outweighed being paid, because as soon as I was done, I had a job. I had a job. So if you can talk to the benefits of taking those opportunities that don't pay.
Yeah, I think that that's really important, right? Because for me, I'm about my dollars. I'm about my money. I'm about securing the bags. Where it's at, I'm going to go get it. But in taking opportunities where you don't get paid, that's what Dr. Lopez was referring to, that your reputation precedes you, right? So if you lay a good foundation and you show up on time, you're punctual, you are knowledgeable, you're able to, like you say, move in a room full of vultures and be the person that you are, but also bring skills and added value and strategic plans and all these things to whatever it is that you're doing that you're not being paid for. People take notice to that. They see your value added, and then they'll bring you on. For instance, I took an HR internship in the Silicon Valley when all my friends were getting paid money, bands, to be at Facebook, Google, all these other places, and I took an unpaid internship. But a year later, it turned around and they hired me on to do HR generalist, right? So it's like, you got to think kind of long-term goal, strategy. What can I gain from this, even if I'm not being paid, whether it's a recommendation, whether it's an in at a national convention or in somewhere else. It's really trying to figure out what you want from that situation and then setting a plan and a goal and moving forward with that.
Yeah, to add to what Ashley's saying, for me, I always see this internship and externship as an investment. Time is the most precious commodity. We only got 168 hours in a week.
Yes.
And it's more precious than money, quite honestly. And if you are willing to invest in yourself, especially those who come from our background and maybe don't have a lot of like material capital to invest initially, invest your time. You're worth it, because you're going to make those important connections, and you need those connections to take you to next level. I also wanted to mention something. I don't know who is on the call or the conference today, but if you're a little bit older and you do have the financial capital, I say invest in a professional coach. So I have gotten one when I was making the transition from staff to faculty. I'm the first one to do everything in my family, so I don't know what it takes to do tenure track faculty positions. So if you can get a professional mentor in your field, like the mentoring never stops. I had it when I had a mentor when I was 18. I have a mentor at 43. Find a mentor, and if you can invest the money, get a professional coach. It's a game changer, right? So if you're older, I hope you hear that. If you're trying to take your career to next level, man, that has been so helpful for me. And so I just want to share that, because it's something I think a lot of people from our background don't think about.
Yeah, I work with my my mentor, my coach, literally every week, and he's been so insightful. But I think the beautiful part about that particular relationship is we've had one for over 20 years, right? So I've been able to tap into his wisdom, and it's helped me progress in my speaking career, my coaching career, and my training career immensely. So Dr. Lopez, I agree that you need that type of person that's going to give you that swift kick to put you in line. So here's a question that came from one of our participants, and Brittany, again, she said that she felt her mental illness and reactions to trauma damaged her reputation in undergrad, and she plans on trying to rebuild in graduate school. How does she eliminate the baggage of mental illness, trauma, and family drama, and et cetera from her life? What would you say to that?
I don't know. Maybe you have a different opinion, Ashley. I thought at some point in my life, once I got my college degree, that's it. I'm going to put all this behind me. No, once I have that healthy relationship, I'm going to put it all behind me. I've been intentional about building the life that I want. But the trauma and struggles that I had when I was younger, they don't magically go away. I'm still in regular therapy. And, I'll disclose this publicly. At one point, I had to take a mental health leave from my job when I was a staff person for 3 weeks and be in intensive therapy because old trauma came up. And here's the thing, I'm not ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
I shared it with my students. I share it publicly because it's a consequence of life. And I do what I can to manage it. That's it. I don't expect to leave it. I expect to manage it and to grow from it and become stronger because of it. I do not hold shame about mental illness that I've struggled with, trauma that I've struggled with. A lot of people struggle with it, whether you're in foster care or not.
Yeah, it's universal.
And I think we have to get rid of the stigma. People get physically ill, people get mentally ill. So what? People go to the hospital. I had to go to the hospital to get my appendix removed. I had to go to the hospital, to deal with my mental health issues. It's okay. So, own it and manage it to the best of your ability. And you don't have to let it damage your reputation because quietness has kept a lot of people struggle. So, I just own it.
Right. There was and actually I'll let you go. There was I did something with Ohio State University where we always take kids leaving care or still in care to just hang out on Ohio State's campus. And we did this session with Dr. Mickey Sharma, who was the head of the psychology department. And he said, it should be our job to normalize mental health, just like any other illness. You take a pill for a headache, or, you take a pill for anxiety. I mean, it should be the same. Like you shouldn't have to look down on mental illness because of what we think it is. So, and that's something that, again, that there are struggles in the Black community when you talk about therapy. When you talk about, hey, are you seeing somebody? I mean, what are our old family secrets? Back in the day, they said you don't talk about what's happening in this house outside these doors. And we have to get out, as a community, have to get out of that type of thinking. And I think some of us have. So we have to normalize mental health. We have to say it's okay to get therapy and deal with those issues, and then do your best to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that to speak to that, in Alameda County, I worked at Behavioral Healthcare Services and was a liaison, and we had a whole initiative called No Stigma. And in that, we talked about how the African American community looks at mental health. Regardless of the African American community or not, I agree with Dr. Lopez in thinking about your own mental health and your own safety. And I think for me, I agree that once I got my college education, like it didn't go away. Like the struggles from when I was little just popped up in a different way, right? Like it might be imposter syndrome, right? Like, but that still comes from a place of not feeling special, not feeling important, not feeling as though I am capable, right? And those feelings stem from what happened in my childhood. But for me, it's really about attending therapy regularly, having a mentor, and journaling. So I journal a lot. Finding tools that help you, wellness tools is what I call them. What do you like to do that helps you? I realized that exercising, writing in my journal, sometimes hanging out with some friends, cool. But I would find wellness tools for yourself. What makes you feel good? And implement those tools within your day. And like everybody else is saying on our call currently, is that everybody struggles with mental health. It's just that people can't see it, right? If I break my arm, you can see my arm is broken. If I'm struggling internally with anxiety or depression or post-traumatic stress disorder, you can't really see that, but you can, because it pops up in different ways in your life. So I would say identify the things that stress you out, your stressors. What's that thing that might send you over the edge a little bit? Identify those and then figure out how to alleviate them when they do pop up. And that might, for me, it looks like therapy. I have to go talk to my therapist. I have to talk to somebody. And I have to constantly do a self-evaluation on how my body and my mind and my spirit is feeling, because all of it works together.
And it does. So here's a question. Of course, I think we've all been challenged, right? I think our challenges push us. But what strengths have come out of some of those challenges that you have experienced?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of mental fortitude. I remember in my doctoral program, you had to be interviewed before you start. And there's people with much better grades, far more intelligent. And they asked me, why should we let you in? And of course, I wrote a little bit about my background. I didn't write about too many details. That's one thing I want to caution people about when writing a personal statement. Don't write too much, don't overshare. But I did share a little bit about the fact that I was in foster care and experienced homelessness. And I said, the reason you should let me into this doctoral program is I may not have the highest test scores, but I guarantee you I will finish. All the things that I've lived through in life has taught me about tenacity and never giving up. And so the thing I would say is that the challenges that I've lived through have helped me learn to navigate systems, have taught me how to reach out to people beyond my family and build a network when it wasn't embedded in my own life. And it's also taught me, I think it's helped me be a role model to others to say, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect to move forward. And I want to specifically speak to Brittany and anybody else who feels like they're in this situation. She mentioned she felt like she ruined her reputation and she has to rebuild it. I love this conference and the idea of moving forward. Keep moving forward. I've made lots of mistakes. I got a whole line of mistakes that's coming up I don't even know about someday in the future. But always, two things that I would say is dust yourself off and get up and forgive yourself. I think, we're always talking about forgiving other people. It's so hard to forgive yourself for the mistakes that we make. And part of moving forward, when we've made those mistakes, is to forgive ourselves and move forward. And it's okay, and learn from it.
I love that, Dr. Lopez. I don't think I can say anything else. I mean, I feel like she just summed it up.
Right.
I think for me, the thing that I think about is making sure that from what has previously happened in my life to where I am now, the biggest thing for me is that I hustle every day. When I get up, I go get it. I figure out what I want, where it is, what connection has it. I need to find them. I need to talk to them. I need to hustle. I have to go get it. And I think to Dr. Lopez's point, when I was in grad school, I didn't have the best grades. I didn't have all these other things, but I realized that when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I don't care how long it takes me. I don't care what has to happen. If that's what I say I'm going to do, I do it. And I think that that's one of the things that I've learned from challenges is to turn lemons into lemonade. It's just a task on how it's going to happen. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's just how am I going to do it? So I think that's what my challenges have taught me.
So dealing with your traumas, dealing with past traumas, what strengths do you feel you've gained? I know for me, it's just, again, like you said, showing up, being there, also being accountable in my, through those challenges. Those are some of the top strengths I know that I developed because of the challenges. This is so crazy. During my sophomore year, there was a moment where I just said, you know what, screw these private lessons. I ain't learning this music because I'm dealing with too much. I don't know if I'm going to go home for the holiday, but then again, where's home? Right? Am I going to try to find a place off campus? But bottom line is, screw this private lesson. I don't care about this music. And I skipped. And this was like one of my juries. And if anyone who was a music major know that juries are very important. They line you up in front of the whole music faculty, and you have to play different instruments and different pieces. And I'm like, all right, I'll just get the next one. But my professor pulled me to the side after that and said, if you just would have showed up, if you just would have showed up. And sometimes we have to say, yes, I'm dealing with something, but we are obligated to still show up. So what are some other strengths that you feel you gained through the process of just school, whether it be undergrad or graduate?
I learned how to plan. I learned how to sit down and think about the end goal. If this is the end goal, what steps am I going to take in order to get to that part? Opposed to just waking up and being like, ooh, this is what I'm going to do today. Mm-hmm. There's actually steps that have to happen in order. There's a process to things sometimes. So I've learned that. I've learned how to plan. I've learned how to be ambitious, how to say, this is what I want, and be okay with that, and be okay with stating that, and not feeling like I have to shrink back or have my dreams be small because of systems that I've been involved in. Like Dr. Lopez said, I've learned how to navigate things way faster and quicker than other people, right? Like I can look at something, and because of the way that I grew up, you have to be able to assess a situation real quick. Like we don't have time to go back and forth and play with it and how to.
No, we don't.
Or else something potentially dangerous could happen. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I've learned how to assess situations and reframe. Which is something that I'm learning how to do now as a little later in life. Is how do you reframe things? If one thing looks this way, how do you look at it, assess it, but then maybe look at it from a different perspective or a different angle? I think, and that's been super helpful in my position doing strategic partnerships, because sometimes you have to reframe partnerships and you have to reframe relationships and figure out what that looks like. So I think those are some of the things I learned.
That's good. I think some of the things I've gained from education is learning about myself. A lot of people major in social work and psychology and things like that, because we're trying to figure ourselves out in our own family dynamics. And so I've actually learned a lot about myself and ways to have healthier relationships and understanding children so that, I could do it a little better than my parents. Mm-hmm. The other thing that it's taught me is just the tenacity of sticking to something. The ability to have delayed gratification is key to success, I think, for me. Sometimes we're kind of in an instant society, but it just takes time to do something well. The other thing I think education has provided me is a platform, to be honest, a platform to do the thing I feel that God's called me to do. Is to support other young people coming up behind us. And I'm so grateful to be part of a community of people who do this. And we are all doing our own thing, but collectively caring about young people and care. And so whatever your platform is, use it. And education happens to be mine, but I'm just really grateful for that piece of it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, ladies, that's definitely wonderful, and I'm glad to hear those strengths. I know mine is to think 2 steps ahead, to always be thinking 2 steps ahead, sometimes 4. So I do a lot of thinking. So let's kind of switch gears, and of course, something we haven't been able to get out of is this silly pandemic. And that was one of the questions. Can we talk about how this pandemic has affected foster youth? I know just here in Ohio, we've had a lot of young people who were in post-secondary education basically lose housing because they stayed on campus and have to either re-enroll in our extended foster care program or try to find places. What have you seen in your communities in regards to the effects of this pandemic on youth that you've come across?
What I've seen in talking to a few young people is that the increase in mental health issues, the isolation, for a lot of young people, maybe their network is small and it got even smaller. And so some of those things have been coming up for some of the young folks that I work with. And that's been tough for them. And the other thing is navigating, traditional school is tough to navigate. Add the layers of online schooling on top of not having the appropriate technology to do it well. school has just become just even that much more difficult for a lot of students that I know have been in care. So the two things that I've seen have really just been like exacerbating mental health issues and navigating a college system now that they actually didn't sign up for, you know? And so you thought you were navigating one system and now you got to do a 180 flip, and you're not even prepared for that, nor are the faculty or staff or administration prepared to fully support, you know, students either.
Right.
Like, let's just be honest about that. It's a whole shift for everybody. And so it's been tough, I think, particularly for students who don't have that, you know, family support.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Here out this way, we've seen really initially a lot of job loss because our young people lost their jobs due to what was going on with the pandemic and them being really in service industries. So there was definitely an increase in job loss. Then we saw that there was an increase in homelessness for our young people here in California who are a part of systems. And then we saw, like Dr. Lopez talked about, an increase in mental health issues. And I think that all three of those, at least for Santa Clara County and for Alameda County, the ways that we combated those things were to support with emergency assistance funds. So pivotal organization that I work for, we reached out to our donors, and our donors were able to support us with emergency assistance funds. We had, I think, Simply Fresh was able to help us with delivering food to our young people. So we tapped into some of our partnerships and our resources to support our young people. One of our young people needed a dresser drawer and a mattress for her and her son. We were able to tap in and figure out how can we get this young person things that we need. So I think, again, it's about figuring out what organizations are doing what in what areas. But when you have exacerbated circumstances like this, it makes it really difficult. We also try to provide online internships for our young people to get some money in our young people's hands because we do year-round programming. So our young people were expecting to have internships. So I think that we just had to get clever around finding ways to support our young people during this pandemic and also support ourselves. In terms of our colleges now have seen an increase in young people returning back to education just due to the sheer fact that education has a lot to offer, right? Like education, you can have financial aid, you can potentially get a laptop through California community colleges, you can get a hotspot. So there are creative ways that we've been trying to re-engage our young people, but it's been very difficult.
Yeah, I know Twitter, the CEO of Twitter donated, and this is just for the state of California, laptops to almost every young person. And I thought that was cool. It's awesome how these big tech companies could step up. I mean, of course, we all would want them to step up even more. But when it comes to this pandemic, I think we also have to be mindful of the resources that are available. And we just can't turn a blind eye and say, no one's out there to help me. I mean, the resources are out there. What are some resources that has either come across your desk or come across your emails for young people, if any?
Well, for young people, you know, I am in a position to where I'm helping a larger group of students now, particularly around social work. I also have a research and evaluation consulting business because I teach research. And so a lot of the work that I'm involved in the community is around creating surveys and applications for nonprofits that are providing rapid relief fund. And so I'm on the back end seeing how nonprofits are providing relief to a variety of community members. And so in that instance, I'm sharing that information out to a variety of people. It overlaps with foster youth in a lot of different ways, folks of color, low income folks. And so for me, I'm just sharing out community resources, not so much specific to foster youth. I know they're out there, but my lens has really been around just community resources in general.
So, due to Pivotal, I work at an agency that caters specifically to foster youth. We have had a lot of resources around internships, job placements. We also have what we like to call coaching staff. So our coaches are sometimes co-located at different campuses, but due to shelter in place, everything has gone both virtual. So our young people have a coach. Our young people utilize their coach to kind of get information on resources. So we have information about internships, job offerings, academic support. And right now we're doing a lot of virtual things. So like if our young people need hotspots, or if they need a laptop, or if they need funds for food, or if they need this, that, and the third. We're also a scholarship program. So we're giving out, making sure that our young people who are enrolled in school, communicating with colleges to make sure that they get their scholarship checks and all those different things. Our hope and goal, well, at least my hope and goal, is that we expand nationally, to have pivotals all over. So yeah, so that's what we're doing to support our young people.
Awesome. So we have about 5 minutes left. If you have questions, if you're tuning in, if you have questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them. We are open we've always been open for questions. It's never, hey, let me wait till the end. No, you can ask questions at any point. I think this has been very informational. The work that you two ladies are doing is phenomenal. Question that did come up is there a list of internships curated for foster alumni, grads and students in mind? Do you know?
So we have some in California, and I can get that information to Shalita or Kimberly or somebody that we can post somewhere so that you guys can see what we're doing out this way and what's happening. And I think we might have a national list, but let me check on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also have some scholarships that also offer internships that actually I have written down. I can send it to Shalita. One thing I wanted to say as we wrap up, I guess two things. I know there are some folks who are in graduate school or going to pursue graduate school, and I'm part of the Foster Scholars Group. And we recently did a Community Connections Zoom conversation around from foster care to foster scholar, specifically addressing how to apply to graduate school, navigating graduate school, and dealing with imposter syndrome. So that'll be available on our YouTube. We have a list of resources available. I'll also share that with Shalita in case she wants to share that with the group, because I know there's a lot of people here pursuing education and graduate school is tricky. And so I want to make sure folks have those resources. And then if anybody wants to reach out to me, if you just search Kizzy Lopez at Fresno Pacific University, my information is public. I am happy to connect with any of you and answer any questions that I can. And so, yeah, I wanted to at least put that out there and offer that.
Awesome. So the question, and I think this will be the last question, what can alumni do to make sure they stay on their goals and dreams as a parting message?
I would say write them down, put them somewhere visual, make a plan, but also take it easy on yourself, love yourself, and have a good night.
Yeah.
Dr. Lopez?
So much of what Ashley said is critical. And I think we've been saying this throughout. I think as you write down your plan, to add an extra layer that has helped me is add accountability circle or partner. You know, we have the best laid plans, but we need folks, and we've talked about this throughout our session, how important it is to have a connection with a mentor or someone that you trust. Share that plan with them so that they can help keep you accountable. And like she said, believe in yourself. And you know what? No matter what it looks like, keep moving forward. I know it sounds really cheesy, but it's true. I think
it is true.
Keep moving forward, no matter what it looks like. Even if it looks like you're not going to make it or you're going to fail, keep moving forward. You don't know what's going to happen if you just keep plugging away.
All right. Well, ladies, again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Again, this was phenomenal. And you two are phenomenal. You're doing great work. I hope to connect with you two offline, definitely. But listen, everyone, we are not done yet. We have a 10-minute break between 12:10 and 12:20. We want you to go get something to eat, but definitely come back, enjoy the commercial break, and listen, we have a amazing resilient community activism panel coming up next promptly at 12:20. So don't go away, but go get something to eat.
Still Here by me, Angela Quijada Banks. Let us never forget our roots, nor who we have become. Our origin is of stardust, and revolution is our legacy. United through bloodlines of royalty, I must profess, for our people will always rise, seeking progress. Nothing can hush our pride or slow the stamina of our stride. Our heritage flows with gold and honey from lands of wealth and jewels and money. Oh, how we have endured the trials of our past, yet when all else has diminished, this resilience will last. For it is written in the cosmos, eons beyond us, that we are divine and without fear, and above all, we are still here. Thank you.
Yeah. What is going on, everybody? I see we are back. 2020 APNC Virtual Summit. Boy, that was a wonderful session that we just had. Let's not forget, though, we have some amazing people who have lived experience. Just amazing. So don't ever count us out now. But I will say this again, if you are liking what you are getting, what you are seeing, and you feel the need to donate, please do not forget to donate at just text foster support to 44321. Again, it can be as small as $1, as large as $5. But again, we are using these funds to continue some COVID relief on part of the foundation, and your support is greatly needed. Again, if you have not liked the Facebook page, if you haven't liked the IG page or the YouTube channel, please go there now. Again, you'll have some exclusive content that you'll be picking up, but also make sure that you are becoming a member of the FCN Foundation, where again, we shoot out job opportunities. We shoot out a lot of different things exclusive to members that you won't get on any of the social media posts or via email. So we encourage you to do that. Up next, we have a wonderful resilient community activism panel. Now, this panel, we are going to discuss how to create a healing and impactful space through community organizations, history and systemic racism education, and self-care while navigating these tense environments. It's no secret that we are in moments where things are unsure, where things are shaky, where being in our normal spaces just doesn't feel the same. I know I'm always on the phone with colleagues and they have company check-ins, and in those company check-ins, sometimes we have to be truthful. And I know as a Black man, there's many times where I've had to say that I'm not okay. I'm not okay with the current system as it is. We see too many things happening right now that we cannot be silent nor comfortable with. So I'm happy to have two amazing women on this panel. Again, Charity Chandler Cole, who is a social activist, social justice activist. And let me tell you, one thing I want to hear from you when we get started is the March on Washington, because I know you and your family went, and I know I wasn't able to be there, but there was a lot of folks there. So I want to definitely touch on that and some of the things that you're doing. But we also have back Dr. Kizzy Lopez. This is going to be, again, a very deep, I want to say. I mean, because I think we can talk about things that we normally haven't had to talk about. So we'll definitely discuss those things. So, Dr. Lopez, is she coming back on? But if not, Charity, good to see you.
Hey, I'm trying to make sure y'all can see my necklace okay. Because, we got to vote up in this piece if we're going to talk about social activism.
Yes, you see.
Go ahead, sorry. Hey, everyone.
My shirt, right?
I know. The shirt changed from the last panel.
I'm saying, I am boundless. Again, another one of the fabulous shirts from FCN, but it means so much. How have you been, Charity?
I've been various feelings. I've been great. I've been good. I've been not okay. I've been not good. I've been overwhelmed. A little bit of everything, which I think is normal at this time.
I believe it is. And I know on your end, I've noticed you've been on so many conversations, definitely in LA, as it comes to social activism, justice. Just how has that been?
It's been interesting. So I do a lot around social activism, from foster care to criminal justice reform to child sex trafficking. Just a little bit about my background for those that don't know. I'm a former foster youth, a current relative caregiver. I'm also a commissioner for LA County Children and Families, and the new co-chair of our historic Racial Justice Committee. I'm also the founding board member and chair of an organization called Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and we do work around criminal justice reform, and I do a host of other things. So as we look at the climate of our country right now, from going through a global pandemic to just the racial injustice that has occurred in our communities forever, there's a lot that people want to talk about and understand, but there's this also heightened awareness of what racism is and how am I impacted by it, how am I a distributor of it, and so forth. So the conversations have been some very good, some very enlightening, some very educational, and then we've also seen a lot of dissent in some of these cases too. So trying to navigate both and be able to provide solutions to people that aren't, bipartisan, and show how we can, come together collectively for the good of humanity and for the country as a whole has been, it's been interesting. And it's also helped me to kind of reset some of my perspectives on how I perceived other folks, how I perceive myself in this space. Because that gives the platform and it leads the way for others to kind of check themselves in the process too, by being someone that's able to lead in that way. So it's been interesting, and I'll get more into the weeds as we progress.
Okay. So as someone, as foster youth, as I guess anybody who wants to put their energy behind a community organization, how do they do it?
So I think it's important first that we kind of understand what community organizing is, because it's easy to say it and do it, but I think folks need to really understand that, while we know the U.S. Constitution exists and that it guarantees equal protection under the laws and the right to change some of those laws when they fall short in protecting individuals or groups, victims of injustice, we normally lack the resources to successfully navigate the legal system or advocate for legislative change or ourselves. For instance, parents that have their children removed for being poor and lack the resources to not only respond to their poverty, nor the hefty list of requirements given to them by their caseworkers to get their children back. Or let's say someone that's convicted of a crime, arrested, and bail is set, but they can't afford to get out of jail, so they're left there before their court date. And at this point, they're not deemed innocent or guilty. And the effect of being incarcerated or even waiting for your sentencing is drastic. And it affects primarily Black and brown people and results in folks losing their jobs, losing their housing, and losing their children because they're normally the primary caregivers. So community organizing and advocacy organizations really step in to fill some of these gaps, from advocating for policy changes to representing disadvantaged individuals to marshaling collective action on issues. Community organizing really works to advance the ideals of social justice. And so community organizing really involves just mobilizing a group of people to address issues that you have in common and different concerns that you have and enabling them to take action. It really focuses on collective action versus individual action. So when we think about fighting for issues ranging from social justice to inequality, you can see the roots of this and the roots of community organizing and movements of the past, such as the suffragette, where, you know, women organized for their right to vote, or the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s, where Black people led by champions such as Martin Luther King Jr., Angela Davis, John Lewis, Rosa Parks, and many others, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, rest in peace. I want to acknowledge her and the phenomenal women and movement she helped to create around a lot of these, but they organized for their right to vote and equality under the law to ensure they had access to jobs and housing and education, to name a few. Keep in mind, a lot of these laws already existed, but they weren't being implemented. So we had to really come together to make sure folks not only implemented the laws, but that they changed some of the laws that really oppressed and negatively affected our communities.
So how do we get people active? How do we get people moving? I mean, yes, like you said, it's one thing to fill a cause. It's another thing to actually move on it and try to enact change. But how do we get the word out and then get people moving collectively?
That's a great question. And that's something in the beginning I struggled with, because I knew that I had a set of circumstances that I was negatively impacted by, such as, let's use my experiences, my horrific experiences in the child welfare system. And I knew that I wasn't alone in my experiences, because there were people that I encountered while in the system that had stories similar to mine and some that had even worse stories. So I wanted to first come in with a cause. You can't go into community organizing without really having a cause. But then you also can't go in thinking that just because you had your isolated experience that everyone's going to rally around your personal experience. You really need to get people together. You need to listen to the people, because this is going to be a shared collective decision making on how you move forward. Listen to the stories of the people, how there's intersectionality in those stories and commonality in those stories. And from there, from getting that group of people, whether it's posting something on social media, attending community groups that already exist. There's a lot of community groups that already exist. A lot of them, what I noticed, were from folks in the 60s and 70s and 80s who started a lot of the community organizing, and that as the millennials came and as we came on board, some of the elements of what they fought for were still there, and it wasn't necessarily speaking to what's transformed over the decades. And while that was still needed and those organizations were still there, there's a lot of amazing work that already existed. So figuring out how we can come in on the backs of these phenomenal giants and figure out how we can work collaboratively with them to use the base they already have, to ignite, younger generations and younger populations and learn from them and figure out they already have platforms and networks in place. And if they don't, really utilizing schools, organizations such as FCN, who has an amazing network of phenomenal current, former foster youth and people that want to advocate for them, and saying, hey, can I have your list of individuals to help promote this cause? But for me, it was simply going on social media and said, hey, this is a huge issue I have. Who else has this issue? Can we have a conversation about it? And then really getting together, talking about it, and realizing that I may have only known 10 people, but that person knows 20 people, and this person knows 30 people, and this person knows 40 people, and bringing those folks together and then clarifying some common goals. Oftentimes when you're community organizing, you can get lost in the sauce because there's so much you want to advocate for. There's so much you want to do. And so you don't have a clear goal or identified. So once you're able to say, if I'm going to fight for child welfare, what specifically do you want to organize around, and focus on one or two goals at a time? If it's ending racism and child welfare, focus on that common goal and then frame strategies around it for action. But then also what's so important to me as we're organizing around these issues is, how do I build leaders? How do I help build leaders that have been impacted by the issues we want to fight for, to be the ones to lead these initiatives and fight these initiatives? Oftentimes, the people that have been in the trenches and have experienced the oppression and experienced the discrimination and experienced the systems are in the background, and we have other folks coming in and being the voice for the people who've actually had the impact. So making sure that you identify who those leaders are or those potential leaders are, and teach them how to mobilize the community around that. And then the power of storytelling, I want to add, because it's important that you tell your story. And I know you're, and this is something that you're big on, Jamal, is being able to tell your story and doing it in a way where knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be transparent. That's what's really going to make the issue more relatable and help to ignite folks.
So, and I know most of you do know that I'm able and have the opportunity to work on policy as it comes to at the federal level. And of course, that's not grassroots. And most people say you get a lot more things done at the grassroots level, at the local level. What has been your experience? Because I know you do a lot of work with Congresswoman Bass, and you have that connection. What's the difference between starting at the local level versus going federal and trying to enact and change policy in that way? Because again, it's, I've seen it. I've seen how, you can walk through the doors of Washington and they say, oh, that little thing, yeah, we'll just throw a little money at it and it'll be okay. And it's not okay.
Yeah. So both are equally important. And I'll start from my personal experience. When I got into this, being an advocate, being an activist, I came in at the grassroots level because I wanted to be around people that I identified with. I didn't even know this whole other level existed, mind you. I didn't go to politics. I didn't know about how our government worked. These people were just people that you see on TV and did not have connections with, didn't know about. So I came in at a very grassroots level because I wanted to, fight for change and enact change. And then after telling my story so much and trying to advocate and fight for change and nothing happening, I learned through that process how intertwined and important the political piece was and the legislative piece was. And that in order for our grassroots and community organizing efforts to work, that means we have to use these folks that we have elected into office and hold them accountable to do their job. And so that was the big thing that I, quickly shifted my focus to, was how, folks are elected into office and what their jobs really are and how they're actual public servants and not politicians, and that they're here to serve us. They're here to advance the needs and the wills of the community. And when they're not doing that, community organizing is holding them accountable, saying you're not doing your job. Here are the demands we have. A lot of the initiatives and the legislation we see put forth is not the elected officials writing that bad boy up and putting it in office representing us. Normally, it's the folks on the ground that have done the community organizing that are writing that legislation and saying, hey, put your name on it and go ahead and send it off. And so what I do now more at the legislative level is holding elected officials accountable. I kind of get off on it, honestly, because I like to go up to folks and say, hey, this is your job. You're not doing it. If you want to keep this job, this is what needs to happen. And that's where the real change happens, is policy. No matter how hard we work at the grassroots level, if we don't have the policy in place to inform that work, it's never going to happen. No matter how hard we march, no matter how hard we protest, if we don't have people that have the courage to step up and fight for that at a legislative level so that it's now the law, and then continue to work at the grassroots level to make sure that law gets implemented, then it's not gonna happen. But unfortunately, because the way of our political system works, and because we can't put legislation into law, it's not going to always be implemented unless we have the folks on the ground really advocating and fighting for it. Because a lot of this legislation gets put into place because folks just want to say they did something. And when you say you did something, it means, did you introduce the law? Did you fight to make sure it get passed? And did you fight to make sure it gets implemented? That's how I associate our elected officials with having done something, not just introducing it.
Well, and let me tell you, just the fact that it makes me angry that, we had a piece of legislation called Fostering Connections. And if you know policy, legislation that was supposed to extend foster care across the nation. But how they wrote it was, as a state, you can adopt it if you want to, but you don't have to extend foster care. Just know there's money there. Yeah, we'll put money in this pot. And if you decide to take it, great. But if you don't, it's okay. And the benefit of extending foster care at least 3 more years in some states helps young people just have that 3 more years of support. And for those that haven't, I think we're up to about 28 states now that has extended, or 29 that has extended foster care, which means we have a hell of a lot more that haven't. But what young person is ready to be on their own at 18?
None of them.
Right?
Not even the ones that have come from a whole family.
Yeah, exactly. And I can look at my 16-year-old now and say, even though you have two parents, you're not ready. You're not ready. And so it's difficult. And I wholeheartedly agree with you when it comes to the implementation part, because you'd be surprised how many policies are sitting in Washington now that says this is what you can do, but jurisdictions aren't following them because no one's holding them accountable.
Right.
How do we hold local offices more accountable? Is it us knowing policy? Is it us knowing who to talk to? What are your thoughts around that?
So that's where we see a lot of the barriers come in place, and a lot of the disadvantages our communities have around lack of education and lack of access and lack of resources, because a lot of times they don't know how to hold elected officials accountable, or even, and something I personally experienced was I was very intimidated when I got in this work, because I didn't feel like I had the rhetoric and to really articulate my thoughts and how I felt. I knew how I felt deep inside, but I didn't know how to put that into words. I didn't know how to advocate for myself in a way in which I felt as if they would look at me as if I was smart enough or good enough or worthy enough. And if I just came off as, the stereotypical Black chick from the hood that was a former foster youth, that they would not give me any respect. But then what I realized along the way is that we need us to show up as we are, how we are, from a broad range of intellect, a broad range of education, a broad range of where we live in our communities, to show just how diverse the needs are of the community. We always have the same woke folk coming to these commission meetings and the committee meetings and showing up. And oftentimes a lot of these commission meetings, say your LA County supervisors, or the committee meetings, whether it's at a Senate, congressional or legislative level, they're having these meetings. There's no audience, there's no public there with public comment oftentimes. And so they get away with a lot. So I say figuring out how to organize your community and your group to show up to these meetings. Go to their websites, look at their agendas, and figure out, when they're holding these meetings, what time they're holding these meetings, and get folks there and get them there early. Sign up for public comment. If you got 2-3 minutes, go in, ahead of time, knowing exactly what you're going to say in that 2 minutes. Write it down and read from your piece of paper, which is fine because they're up there reading from their piece of paper the whole time anyway. So it's totally normal. So making sure that you go in knowing not just the policy, forget the policy piece. What are the needs of the community? What are they not doing wrong? You don't have to say, according to section 3.5.1 of subtitle, yada, yada, yada. No,
right.
This is what I am experiencing in my neighborhood. This is what you're supposed to do. What are you doing? You're not doing it. This is how it's affecting me. So just talking about, what's happening to you and the barriers that are existing from the start, is cause enough for and because these meetings are public, it's recorded, it's taped, it's there permanently, so they have to address it. But if we are not going to these meetings and these commission meetings and all these meetings where the public has access to, they're going to not feel beholden to the community. So showing up, knowing what you want to talk about in advance, and really speaking from your heart and speaking very passionately.
So, and this just came to me. Why is it that some people in our community are afraid to address our elected officials in these forums of the committee meetings? Is it that because of the history of nothing being done? I mean, there are some people that just say, you know what, nothing's going to change anyway, so why even get involved?
Yeah, can we curse on here?
Listen, we grown.
Well, because some of them are assholes, honestly. Some of these elected officials walk around as if stuff don't stink, and that really intimidates folks from coming in because they feel like I am not going to be heard anyway. They're going to dismiss me, and they're going to dismiss me in a way that's going to diminish the value that I bring to this conversation. And also, a lot of the times they don't hear us. They're not listening, no matter how many times you show up to these meetings. Even with the Black Lives Matter movement in LA, and we're trying to get rid of the district attorney. They've been showing up to those meetings for 3 years, back to back, every week, and there still hasn't been a lot of change. So a lot of folks, rightfully so, feel as if my voice isn't going to be heard. They're not going to do anything about it. But I say to that, continue to show up, continue to make your voice heard, because eventually they're going to have to respond. And all you're doing is racking up evidence and justification of how non-responsive they've been, how much the community has been coming forward to fight for these things. And so when their term comes, when they try to run again, we hold them accountable by voting them out. That's where we have the power. People don't understand how powerful our vote is. And it's so powerful that they're trying to keep us from voting. That's just say a lot. The fact that we have initiatives in California on the ballot to try to get folks that are formerly incarcerated, get them the ability to vote. If voting didn't matter, why would they, exit us out?
Yeah.
Why would they try to hold that back from us? So when we see folks are not listening to us and they're not taking the will of the community for face value and not fighting for the needs of the community, then when we go in, we don't say we're not going to vote at all. We're going to say we're going to vote you out. And that's how we hold them accountable. And that's how the next group of elected officials learn that, okay, this community is serious and they have enough collective will and power behind them to keep me here or make me leave.
So, of course, this has been very controversial in our community when it comes to looting and destroying property. Which is more important, the vote or the destruction of property, to get a point across? Because, there's been many quotes, and I don't want to misquote, but I know, to sum it up, it's since we've marched silently for years and obviously you haven't listened. So now it's time to shake some things up.
So I want to be very clear in saying that the communities and the organizations that have organized around fighting for racial injustice are not looting, are not destroying property. We are very structured. And I'm saying I'm an individual when I go out and protest. I'm not part of the Black Lives Matter movement, but I'm 100% in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I've been to a few of their community meetings and a few of their personal general meetings, and they are organized. They are structured. They go in specifically with the intent to not loot, to not destroy. That's not them. We have a lot of folks on the outside that are agitating what we're trying to do, because what we're trying to do, we're just trying to fight for our lives. We're saying, right, we want to live, we want to survive, we want to have access to all the things you have access to. But that bothers some people so much that they'll go in and infiltrate these protests. And forget the word protest. These are uprisings, okay? We're uprising and fighting for our lives. They hate it so much that they want to come in and start fires, in loot and destroy. And granted, we do have some folks that are Black, brown, indigenous, everything alike, white as well, primarily white, that are going in and looting as well. But that speaks to the economic disparity in our country. We have some folks, because I've seen some of the youngins out here going into the stores, or some of the moms out here going in and grabbing microwaves. What does that say about our country? That the economic wealth gap is so large that the only opportunity that I'll have to get diapers for my babies or a microwave or even that Louis bag is that I have to go in and take advantage of a movement that's fighting for our lives, because some folks are also so disassociated from that because we're just so used to and numb and conditioned to being oppressed that it's something we're not even going to take part in, because we're just like, I'm just going to live and do my best, period. And then there's others who are going in and looting because there's really that they see it as their only opportunity to have access to the things that everyone else in the world that don't live in their communities have access to. So for me, I look at that as not folks going in and trying to destroy and take away from our communities. I say, what are we doing wrong that folks don't have enough money to go and purchase a microwave? Because I'm not there looting, because I could purchase a microwave. Charity 20 years ago probably would have been up in there grabbing some diapers, some formula, a microwave, a few brooms, not because I'm a criminal, but because I have a need for this and I see an opportunity to get the things I need because I cannot afford it.
Oh man, you just hit it on the head. And most people aren't even looking at it that way. They're not looking at it as these people are looting or taking advantage of the situation because of what they don't have.
Right.
And the news will never spin that narrative either.
Never.
So with that being said, how does one, this is a question that came up, how does one that's new to advocating connect to legislators? I mean, I know personally, we just call and say, hey, we need to meet with you. This is the issue. But what has been your experience?
So something we do with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition is we teach people just to show up at their door. It's public. Folks don't know they can walk into these county buildings. They can walk into your Capitol. You can go stand in front of their door. You can do sit-ins if it gets that bad. But we've actually just gone to folks' office because half the time they won't answer. Half the time your response, 90% of the time, the response will come from someone that works for them. So we would just show up. If we know they're walking out of their office at a certain time, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I need a moment to talk to you. I've been trying to get in contact with you. It hasn't been working. I have some really pressing issues my community are facing. You work for me. I need to talk to you. And sometimes even have your camera up when you're approaching them, because that will make them, pay attention, because they don't want to be seen as not being responsive to the community. But I say find out where they are. There's acts, and even if you go on their websites, you can actually sign up as a citizen and request a meeting with your legislator. And it is painful sometimes to get access to them. So that's when you tap into some of the community organizations that exist that have access to them and say, hey, I need to be put in contact with so-and-so, or can we bring so-and-so to the organization so that we can have a community forum with the whole organization and all of our clients and all of the people we serve, and hear from them. And oftentimes that works, and oftentimes it doesn't. So it's really touchy-feely. But when they do have community forums, when you do go on their websites and figure out when they're having events, show up there and be prepared to speak to them.
I think another point I want to make to what you just said, as an addition, be ready to know what you're talking about.
Yes.
A lot of these legislators, if you're not meeting with their front level staff, their cabinet members, you have to be ready to state your case in 2 minutes or less.
Yes. Have your elevator speech ready, as I call it.
Right. Ready. But here's the thing. And this is one thing that we've been able to be successful at the federal level. Not only have we been able to go in with a problem, but we bring solutions. One thing we were able to do is get a voucher program created from scratch for youth who age out of care. And it took us taking the problem to Secretary Carson, presenting it to him, and in 4 months we have a program. That's the Foster Youth to Independence Initiative, which provides Section 8 vouchers to any and every youth that's going to be aging out of care. I mean, now that's the one-off, because nothing happens in social policy that fast.
Yeah, very true.
Right. Nothing happens like that. But the issue that I see with a lot of advocates is they only complain.
That's such a point.
Yeah.
People understand how important that is. Not only because if you have a plan, you're going to have more ammunition to get it advanced and implemented. But I hate to say this, a lot of the times why some of these elected officials don't respond to your needs is because they also don't know how to solve the problem. And they're not going to tell you that. So they're just going to ignore you or going to put you on the back burner because they do not have an answer. Some of these folks get elected because somebody in their family was an elected official, or because of who they know, not necessarily what they know. And so a lot of the times, our elected officials fail us because they just don't know what the hell to do or how to do their job. So, and they're going to say it. So coming in with not only the issue, but also a solution, and a solution that you didn't just come up with that's based off of collected conversation with your community and pinpointing what needs to happen and how it needs to happen, and giving that to your legislator and saying, here are the solutions. I've reached out to elected officials before. And I remember when I started doing that, it was because this person was able, without being, they weren't embarrassed by it or anything. They said, well, I don't have the answer. Can you write out what you think that should look like? And I was like, well, I sure can. And because, well, hold up, I'll be right back.
Right.
He did that, I was like, okay, that's when it dawned on me that these people don't really know. And some of them, the good ones, are going to say, I don't know. I'm here to learn about the issues, and I'm here to figure out what the solutions are from the community. And that's okay. But some of them want folks to assume that they have it all together. They have all the answers. And that's what we don't need in politics. We need public servants to serve. Well, as a mother, I'm a public servant to my child. I became a mother. I didn't have a handbook. I didn't know how to do this. I'm still figuring it out. So when my children come to me and say, Mom, this is what I need, this is how I need you to do it, I'm listening. And I'm going to go ahead and try to implement some of the ways in which you feel I could be a better mother. I'm not going to come in this thinking I'm the adult and you're the child, that I have all the answers, when I'm here to satisfy your needs and to make sure you're okay. And they need to take that same approach. What are the issues? How can I help you? What are some of your solutions? And how can I really engage my community the right way?
Yeah, and we can't assume that each legislator or elected official understands, even when we pinpoint it to child welfare.
Yeah.
You know, we went through in 2016, 2014 to 2016, a 2-year battle to extend foster care here in Ohio. And when we finally got it up to the governor level at the time, you know, it's as if he knew nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're sitting in his office and it's like, well, why do I need to sign this into law?
Yeah.
You know, tell me about child welfare.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been in office for all this time, you know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can't assume, and this kind of goes back to also being able to tell your story effectively, that elected officials know about your particular plight and issue.
Right.
We have to be willing to explain it in plain terms.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get all jargony. I mean, most of us aren't lawyers, so we're not going to use those types of terms anyway.
Right.
But you have to be willing to be vulnerable at the time where it is needed the most.
Yes.
And just assume that who you're speaking to is not aware. Yeah. Because what I do know is each elected official has one person in their office for each issue.
Yes.
You know, there's one person that covers housing. There's another person that covers social services. There's another person that deals with environmental. So even if you don't reach that person, then you're gonna hit the next best person who is assigned to that particular idea.
Exactly. And that's what we did in California with criminal justice reform. We were able to go to our legislators, approach them, even some of the most conservative ones that were completely against criminal justice reform, and just had this one perspective of, and mind you, I bring up criminal justice reform a lot because in California, 70% of our criminal justice and prison population is former foster youth. So I make that connection a lot because it's us. It's us. And so when we go in and we tell our stories, and we tell them very passionately, and we tell them about our, the circumstances surrounding why we're incarcerated, that stems from foster care and the lack of resources and opportunity where we were given, a lot of them just had no idea. They didn't know. They only know what information they're fed in their little circles, or what information they're fed in whatever social work curriculum they got that, was completely biased and racist. Right. So they don't really understand. So when we come in and we tell our stories, we humanize our experiences. We are no longer just this poor person who was in the prison system or who was in foster care system. And they place a lot of that blame on us. So when we humanize it and we say we are the manifestation and we are collateral damage in a system that was meant to oppress us, and we tell them how they have not only the role, but the responsibility to do something about it, they're like, wow. I was in a session recently with a good friend of mine, Dr. Ken Iobi, and he kind of broke down, he did some surveys. He's a researcher. He did surveys, and he surveyed people to see how many people actually knew that foster youth existed and about our foster care system. I think it was like less than 3%.
Wow.
And people don't know. So we can't go in assuming that people know. How could they care about us if they don't know about us? So being able to tell our stories and advocate is how we're going to really get real change to happen.
And I think that's with any issue. If we're not advocating for it, then it's not going to happen. Right. There was a question that said, for those that are that have become extremely discouraged with voting, and they doubt that their vote matters and that voting works, what do you say to that?
I say what I said earlier. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't be fighting so hard to oppress us and to keep the vote away from us. And I also think with our generation, I'm going to assume you're a millennial. I didn't grow up knowing about politics or even knowing about the civil rights movement. And we're not taught this, a lot of this in school. I didn't know about how many sacrifices were made by, forget the word ancestors, that seems so far away, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, to fight for our ability to vote. We were only allowed to vote as recent as 1963, 1964. That's not that long ago. We have people still alive and living and thriving right now who fought for the right to vote because it was so important. So many people died for this right. So our vote is our voice. Our vote is our power, and it lets people know exactly what we want and how we want it. When they want us to be discouraged, they want us to feel as if our vote isn't powerful and as if it doesn't mean anything, and they want us to succumb to the oppressive conditions that allow them to thrive and allow them to use and exploit us, exploit our bodies, exploit our labor, and they want us to continue to be criminalized so that they can have cause and justification for why they need billions of dollars in funding to go to these different systems and these different institutions to control us. And so when we vote, we are demanding what we want and how we want it. And the numbers can't lie. Even with 45 in office right now, when you hear people saying that, and one of the main things is that he did not win the popular vote.
No, he didn't.
He won the electoral vote. Because there's this group of people that have so much power and control. We want to do away with the electoral voting period so that the popular vote can count more. But that's how deep systemic and structural racism goes, that we have this whole other leg that can override the vote of the people. But there's still the rhetoric around how many people actually voted and making sure that they know and he knows that you did not win the popular vote. There's this a whole group of people that wanted something different and wanted something. We're able to use that and leverage that now in this election and in further elections. But your vote is your power. Your vote is your voice, and you need to vote. If you don't vote for yourself today, vote for the people that fought for your right to vote.
Right, and I've said this in many conversations about the Electoral College and how it was basically set up for marginalized communities not to have a vote.
Exactly.
And how, yes, I agree. It needs to go away because it basically says like some of the bigger states that are historically red states get the vote, get that big push.
No, it is not. It is by design, baby. It is by design.
It is. So the question is, how do we become more aware of the privileges that we have? Or the privileges you have and I have versus privileges that other communities have? How do we become aware of that?
I think first you really have to understand systemic versus individual racism and how it works. Do I have time to break that down?
Break it down. Yeah.
Okay. And because folks really disassociate the two. So there's structural racism and there's individual racism. And I think it's so important to talk about racism and just call it off for what it is here. So structural racism is basically a system in which public policies, institutional practices, cultural representations, and other norms work in various, often reinforcing ways to perpetuate racial group inequity. It's primarily characterized by white supremacy, which is the preferential treatment, privilege, power, access, and opportunities for white people, and is normally at the expense of cumulative and chronic adverse outcomes for people of color. That's Black people, brown people, indigenous people. It encompasses and an array of other folks if you're not white. It encompasses the entire system of white supremacy. It's diffused and infused in all aspects of society, including our laws, our history, what we're taught and what we're not taught in school, our culture, our politics, our economics, and our entire social fabric. It is the most profound and pervasive form of racism. And all other forms of racism, such as individual, interpersonal, internalized, I could spend a whole day talking about internalized racism, they all emerge from structural racism. Individual racism is when it's an individual's racist assumptions, their beliefs or behaviors, and it's a form of racial discrimination that stems from conscious and unconscious personal prejudice. It includes examples such as telling a racist joke, believing in the inherent superiority of white people over other racial groups, or not hiring a person of color because, something just doesn't feel right or their name is too ghetto. It's connected to and learned from broader socioeconomic histories and processes, and is supported and reinforced by structural racism. And our cultural narrative in the United States about racism, it typically only focuses on individual racism. And it fails to recognize structural racism. And it's often seen as psychological and something that you can just be cured of when it's really embedded in our structural fabric of our nation, and it's timeless. So your question was, how do you become more aware of these privileges? And I think it's such an important question. And I'm gonna add on to that. How do you become more aware of racism in general and your privileges? Because it's important that you understand this, whether you're on here as a educator or a social worker or someone that helps to advance the needs of the communities. If we're going to really do good and help restore children, we first have to admit that racism and privilege actually exists. If we don't start here, we're not going to get very far. When we deny its existence, we're denying and undermining the actual experiences that people have that are hurtful, harmful, and even deadly. How we as a society identify with race is extremely powerful and influences our experiences. It shapes our behaviors and determines how we show up in the world. Our society not only privileges other people, white people, but there is a possessive investment in whiteness that prioritizes white people and white property, which is why we have this whole rhetoric around looting from others over politics, from politics to education to housing, employment, and access to almost everything. It's prioritized literally over everything. And to truly know this is to live this. I don't care which or which you heard in your bachelor's program, your master's program, your doctoral program. If you have not lived this, you will not truly know this. I don't care how much you've studied and examined it or examined us. I have lived this and I know and have heard the heart-wrenching stories of people whose lives have been upended and interrupted due to racial profiling, for driving while Black, for looking put together for a Black person, which has to translate to criminal behavior of being a rapper or basketball player, to looking too run down that you have to be dangerous and violent. And that suspicion is viciously acted upon. And to take a step further, to really understand your racism and privilege, you have to go beyond admitting racism exists and not condoning racism, but you have to actually commit to making unbiased choices and being anti-racist in all aspects of our lives. Being anti-racist and really recognizing your privilege means actively fighting against racism and privilege. It means being in a constant state of checking your own implicit bias. No one's born racist, so don't worry about that. There's hope. Our behavior, and it requires ongoing self-awareness and reflection as you move through life. So for me, I am in a constant state, and I'll use this as a Black woman who has experienced incarceration, who's experienced the foster care system, who has experienced every form of exploitation and oppression. I have to check my bias and my privilege every day, because I'm also now a Black woman who has a master's degree, who's about to enter her doctor's program, who makes 6 figures, who's married to a Black attorney, who has a big, beautiful house, who my children have education I didn't have. I have all these privileges now. And so checking my privilege means, how do I not only appreciate the things that I have, but how do I use that privilege, recognizing that there are people that still look like me, that come from the communities that I left? How do I use that and use my story to help others, to not sit back? Because I could easily, like everyone else, even white people, they could easily sit back and be comfortable in their privilege and just look at other folks like, woe is them, woe is they. It's not my issue, it's not my concern, but we use our privilege by standing up to things that are racist, standing up to, if you're in leadership positions, if you're a legislator, if you're an elected official, or if you're the person in charge of determining the policies that are in place in your organization, you be intentional in making sure that those policies are not discriminatory, that they're not racist, that they allow room and opportunities for others to grow. I mean, I see a lot of organizations that, they'll hire Black folk, they'll hire brown folk to fit that diversity quota. What you're really doing is you're adding insult to injury, because now you want me to come in here. I'm going to use child welfare folks as an example. You want me to come in here as the token Black person that, that exemplifies my community. And you want me to come here and implement these racist ass policies that I have no control over changing.
Exactly.
Social workers who come in, they do the work and they want to help their communities and save children and change lives, but they are restricted from doing so. They're unable to actually do good because they're limited by these racist policies. So if you're, regardless of what tier you're in, what level you're in, you speak up to injustice. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy. You may lose your job, but it's going to be
it's going to be worth it.
You have to speak up to injustice, and you have to use your privilege for good. But to use your privilege for good, you have to recognize how it operates and use it in a way where you're not coming from a savior complex. I'm going to use my privilege to save these folks. No, I'm going to use my privilege to stand behind and beside the leaders that need to be leading these initiatives, and use my resources and my support and my access to help advance the needs of the community from behind. Did y'all see the?
Wait a minute. Let me drop my mic real quick. Charity, you hit on so many needed things. And this isn't our first go around. I love to hear you just talk so eloquently about the plight and how to get things solved. But one thing that was coming to mind, because it's no secret, a lot of alumni at this point, I know I'm 40, I'll be 41 this year, have children. I have 4 Black children. I have 3 sons, and I know you have sons as well. How do we translate this conversation where, like you said, we're successful, right? I don't live in the hood. Haven't lived in the hood in quite a long time. My kids has never experienced the hood. How do we take our experiences and teach them? Because right now, though, they are the one that's being targeted.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
With my oldest being 16, the next up is 14, the next up is 12. They are being targeted, but they are also starting to really see racism.
Yes.
Those conversations are hard, but they're necessary. I've had them. I have to continue to have them. How are you having that conversation?
So I have teenagers. I have a 15-year-old, 14-year-old boys. I have 7-year-old twins, and then boys as well. And then my daughter, who's, how old is she, 4? And so I'm having to have these very tough conversations right now. And oh my gosh, it is not easy. And there's no one way to do it. My children have been so privileged that they know mommy's poor little sad story, but they don't have they're so removed from it that they're like, that was in your time. I'm like, well, I'm 34. What you mean that's in my time?
Right.
My time. What are you talking about? But they've been so removed from it, and they have this mindset that no matter how smart the world thinks mommy is, to them, I'm just mom, and she don't know what she's talking about. So proximity is important for my children. I have to make them proximate to some of the issues. So instead of being that mom that just goes to the community meetings or speaks on panels or does this, I bring them with me because I want them to hear the stories of people that look like them. I've been in a constant state over the past 10 years of educating myself on the plight of Black people, on our history, on everything that I was denied, everything that I wasn't taught. And it's so overwhelming. So we're barely as adults getting to learn about our own histories that we haven't had time to really teach our children. So being intentional about teaching our children about their history. I started off with getting some flashcards from this organization called Urban Intellectuals. I think they're having a sale right now. But get some flashcards so that they can not just learn about the history, our Black history that they want us to know about, but really, breaking down the different ways in which we fought for our rights, and then bringing them to the community forums and to the around legislators and around everything we want to do as parents. Bring them to it. My children have attended various protests throughout Los Angeles to DC. Because I want them to see and feel, not just see on TV. And if you have access, there's a lot of smaller protests happening. You don't have to be in the thick of it. You can watch from afar, but letting them see how positive they are, how it's not the fighting and the looting and everything they want folks to believe.
It's not what they see on TV.
Not what they see on TV. Because my son was like, when I told them we were going to a protest, they were like, I want no parts in that. No, ma'am. No, thank you. I'm not me. And when I took them to a protest, I could show you a text message where my nephew was like, this just changed my life. Yeah. This changed everything I want to do with my life. I did not realize how peaceful it was, how inspiring it was, how motivating it was, how much our communities had to fight for what we have. They just don't know. And the further down we get generational, the more removed we are from the history of the fight and of our plight. So we start by teaching our children. And if they don't want to listen to us, find groups and organizations that they can be a part of that they will listen to, because they need to understand their history. They need to understand what's happening in our world today, because if they just rely on the media or the memes they see on Instagram and social media, they are going to be in a constant state of confusion and of not wanting any parts of it. So proximity is so important for my children to learn. I had to drag them to DC to go to the protest. They want zero parts in it. I mean, when they went there, they were like, oh my gosh. And when I showed them all of the, the buildings, and I was like, we built this. There's this rhetoric that Black people are lazy and they're this. Like, we built this joint. What you mean? How we lazy? We built this.
Right.
And when they get to see with their eyes, these beautiful buildings, and then the manifestation of our hard work and our efforts and what we did for free, they're able to understand it differently. So we owe it to our children, whether you're Black, whether you're brown, if you're a Latinx, and that history and culture is so deep. I'm 1/4 indigenous. So learning about that history and teaching my children about that, it's so important that we make sure our children are not too far removed from our history and what it means to them today, especially.
Right. And how that could affect how they blossom. Oh my, that just points all over. So of course, I kind of opened it talking about because we all work in and we deal with other races and culture, and it's just highly charged now.
Mm-hmm.
How do we go into these spaces, and how do you care for yourself when working with populations and situations that may trigger you?
Yeah. So I could get my husband and he can tell you that I'm triggered all the time. I'm in a constant state of being triggered. Something I have to deal with, something I just have to, because I am constantly triggered. But for me, I go into these spaces unapologetically.
Mm-hmm.
I go in knowing my worth in these spaces and the value that I bring. And that value doesn't stem from how many degrees I have. My value stems from my lived experience. Right. I think everyone that has lived experiences that people fight and advocate for should get an honorary doctorate degree on GP, in my opinion, because we live these experiences. And when we use our lived experience and we are willing to be vulnerable and use that information in these spaces in a way that's hurtful and that triggers us, that means something and it's powerful. And for me, even though I show up unapologetically and I show up calling it for what it is, my mental health is important. If I don't have good mental health, I'm not going to be able to show up for my children who I'm fighting for and that matter the most. So I'm in a constant state of just self-care, whether it's reading a book that I appreciate or listening to good music, or, I'm really into anything superhero movies and stuff. So my joint. And exercising and drinking a lot of water and taking my sea moss gel. I am making sure that I'm healthy when I go into these situations, because I can be easily triggered. And then I've taught myself not to be, which you wouldn't believe it if I said this actually, but I've taught myself to not be so quick to respond to the things that trigger me and to listen first. Because my perspective is not everyone else's perspective. So be able to respond to the things that trigger you in a way that's not only healing for you, but also allows other people to heal from whatever they think about, what's affected us. Because
right.
If we're going to be in a constant state of dissent, but you will be triggered if you go, and I'm not going to lie, there's no solution or cure for it. If you go out and you advocate for these issues and these things that you care about, you will be triggered, whether it's hearing somebody that had a similar story from you that you don't want to tell. There's parts of my life that I refuse to tell for years. And when I hear it, I'm like, oh my God. So whether it's hearing a story that's similar to yours or hearing someone downplay your experience, there's a lot of different ways you can be triggered. So going in, taking a deep breath, saying a prayer. I pray before everything. Lord, guard my heart, guard my mind, guard my fist, guard it all so that I don't hurt nobody up in these meetings. Say that. And I have to say that because I know I can go from 0 to 100 real quick. So whether you're, and I'm spiritual, I'm very spiritual, not necessarily religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I pray to God every day that you guard me, put a shield over me, bring to my remembrance the things that need to be said and take away the stuff that I need to leave out. And I say that all the time.
Yeah, because, there's plenty of movies out there that depict some of our history. And I think there's one believe personally that's been looked over is the story of Rosewood. And that I
haven't watched that yet either. I need to watch it.
And I've watched it recently in the last couple months because, again, when it comes up, I want it and I show that to my kids, right? So it's part of telling the history. And I showed them, and it's like, well, why would anybody do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why would anybody lie just to get out? I said, this is what's been done. Yeah. Right. So, and I think that equates to what we see in child welfare now. Well, why are agencies doing what they're supposed to do to protect children? Well, they cover stuff up. Just like in the Fernandez case. Over in LA County, you got the 6-year-old boy who has been abused over and over and over again, and people covered it up.
Yep.
And it happens so much in child welfare, and I hate to say it because it's a system that we are completely engulfed in, but it happens, right? So you do have to protect your mental health. You have to protect those triggers.
Yeah.
Man, you do. You just do. So I did want to open it up for questions. We got just a couple more minutes. So if you are tuned in, feel free to put your question in the chat for myself or Charity. Listen, these are topics that most people are scared to address. Right. And we are addressing it here now. I think there was a map going around, Charity, that showed how many Black massacres there were between the 1800s to the early 1960s. Question was, can you discuss what it means to be an ally?
Oh, that's such an important question.
Yes.
Being an ally, oh my gosh. Being an ally is being in support of the issues and the causes and the people. We get a lot of allies that want to come in leading on issues that we were impacted by. And I get the desire, and I appreciate the desire to want to come in and help. But that kind of leads back to not everyone, but a lot of folks that have this savior complex where they're not listening to what the issues are. They're not too concerned with the needs of the community, but they have this great idea for how they can fix our problems based off of what they read in school or what they read in the book, and didn't really even have, the opportunity to meet with us, hear from us, have proximity to us in our issues, and they want to come and save us. So a true ally is someone that really cares about an issue or a cause, because they've had, they didn't just learn about it on the website, but they've interacted with someone. The best allies come from people who have had an interaction with someone that has touched their heart beyond belief, and they want to do something. They want to use their privilege to help that person, and they want to use that privilege and their resources to ask the very important question: how can I support you? Or how can I help to advance you into a leadership role so that you can be the one to lead this initiative? Versus, can you come, I'm going to create this organization and you come work for me, or you come be my entry-level $10 an hour job. We need allies to really come in and support unapologetically, but intentionally what we want to advance and the solutions we have. And it's okay to come in with and be a part of the shared solutions and shared decision making, but coming in, I've seen a lot of allies come in as if they knew it all, as if they had all the solutions. And the second we didn't succumb to their demands and what they felt we should be doing, they knew how easy it was to let us go because we needed some of the resources and access they bought. So come in and support us beside or behind, and do it in a way where you're not going to get the spotlight, you're not going to get the glamour, you may not even get the appreciation all the time. I certainly don't do this for appreciation or for acknowledgement at all. I'm actually offended if you give me anything because I'm fighting for my life. I don't need it. I don't need appreciation for this. When we get folks that come in and feel like they're not appreciated enough or I'm not acknowledged enough, and then they walk away. So coming in and doing this is doing it because you want to do it from the bottom of your heart. Mm-hmm. You're not in it for any reward. You're in it for the reward of a healed humanity and a healed community. And if you can't do that, then you just need to just recheck your bias. Recheck your intentions and reassess what you're there for. And it's okay. It's okay to lean that way on accident, but then quickly come back and check yourself because that happens all the time. But a true ally is going to come in and support.
Listen, one thing my mentors always said to me was do it for the cause and not the applause.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it. That's it. I mean, if you're in it to get accolades, do something else because it'll cause more harm than good. So you hit it right on the nose. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to give a virtual round of applause for Charity Chandler Cole, who has dropped many mics today. How can they reach out to you if they want to connect?
Well, I'm on Instagram as Charity, the number 4 president. I'm on Facebook as Charity Chandler Cole. You can give out my email if you want. Those are normally, don't call me. I'll give them a number.
No.
I got a lot of spam calling right now from COVID.
So definitely reach out. Yeah, definitely reach out. At this time, we are going to take a 10-minute break, ladies and gentlemen, for the commercial break. Actually, a 5-minute break, and then we are going to jump directly into our entrepreneurship panel. Please stay tuned. Charity, thank you again.
Bye, everyone.
All right, we are back. Yes, again, I have changed another shirt. Since we talking about entrepreneurship, yes, I just had to plug my own individual brand, Jamal Callahan, Mr. Motivator. And you can find me on Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, with Mornings with Mr. Motivator. Yes, so we have two very successful entrepreneurs that we are going to be talking to for our entrepreneurship panel. Now, this panel is to just talk about how to transform an idea into a successful business or nonprofit through components of leadership, team building, branding, and financing that thing through a pandemic. So without any further ado, we have Christian Benjamin, CEO of Story MKTG, and also what's going on, CB?
What's up, man? How you feeling?
Oh man, living the dream. Living the dream.
Changing, man. You looking good, sounding good.
Listen, we try to be as professional as possible.
Already.
And then next up we have the very, very incomparable Steve Beyondolillo. He is the founder and president of Beyondolillo and Associates. Steve, how you doing, man?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
Oh, great. So let's kick this off. I think this is going to be something to definitely end on a high note as we talk about entrepreneurship. Just if you two gentlemen can kind of give a background of how you got to this point in business, just to start off with. Who would like to go first?
Christian, you got on first. Go right ahead.
Put me on the spot. No, I've been what some people like to call a serial entrepreneur for the past, at this point, it's been about 10 years. So I started out as a solopreneur, per se, started out doing design work for different companies that I could find to be an apprentice for and do, website development, different things like that. And I kind of grew the ideal company into a marketing agency and started developing a team and started getting bigger projects, and then kind of transitioning into product-based companies such as, we'll get more into it, but I started opening up product-based companies because being in the field I'm in, it was very unique. I got to learn about a lot of other fields. As we doing marketing for certain businesses, I started to learn how those businesses operated, and some of them I started to do myself. So started to kind of grow the whole entity and learn through the marketing agency, through product-based companies, through different things like authorship, speaking engagements, which is still your entrepreneur when you're going out getting paid to speak and do things like that. So I started to learn the whole like matrix of entrepreneurship and different ways that you can fit your purpose into something that can build profit and become like a life you want to live every day. So it's been exciting. It's been tough. It's been exciting. It's been something I wouldn't change for the world.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Steve?
Well, just so you know, I have a firm that's been around over 3 decades, and you guys can sort of peg me historically in the world of nonprofit fundraising. I have the firm that gets the credit or the blame, right, depending on your viewpoint on this type of fundraising, for having popularized walkathon fundraising in the United States. Walkathons, bikeathons, 24-hour relays, what many people characterize now as either grassroots fundraising or small dollar fundraising. So we did not invent that type of fundraising to support nonprofits. It had existed from the 1960s. And in fact, walkathons grew out of the political protest marching in the 1960s, which is very relevant to a lot of what we're experiencing in today's social environment. So what we did, though, was get into that game, and we're the first people to reconceive it as million and multi-million-dollar business. Walkathons used to make, 70, 80,000, 50,000, 30,000. Great. But no one until us thought, why is that so? Why shouldn't these walkathons attract tens of thousands of people and raise tens of millions of dollars? And so what we did, we were the first people in history to do that. And not only did we do it, we never looked back. So that when we had started in business back in the 80s, gentlemen, when we started in the 80s, yes, you can think of your favorite musical artists from the 80s, if you can even remember any.
I can't. Music is life. So yeah, I can.
When we started back in the 80s, the entire field was maybe a $20 million trickle. And we spent the next 30 plus years driving it into a $2 billion industry. And you say, how did you do it? Well, we did it by producing those gigantic 30, 40, 50,000 person events. But then we switched to an educational model and then went on to teach and consult all the major nonprofits in the United States who do that kind of fundraising on how to do it. And that is how we actually really grew and developed our national brand. First 6, 7 years, we're producing events sort of local. We're up in the Northeast in a few states. When we switched the model to teaching and consulting, we grew it out to a 40 state and 4 country business. The overall market grew from 20 million to 2 billion, and mostly through training and closely managing 13 to 14,000 nonprofit staff doing those activities. So that's an historical niche, because I think everyone knows a walkathon. Like you've heard of something like Relay for Life, or Making Strides Against Breast Cancer, or the AIDS walks. I mean, you've heard of those things. Well, that's the space that my firm brought to scale and popularize and trained into the nonprofit world in the U.S.
Yeah, that's
an interesting place that we started in business. And of course, the other side of our business that people know it for, we coined a phrase called signature event. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that, but it's an event whose brand recognition might be even greater than the nonprofit that's sponsoring it. So what that means is we brought the concept of branded fundraising events into the nonprofit world. Nonprofits were a little squeamish at one point about having events that were more famous than them. How can I have an event that's more famous than me? Well, we said, in the for-profit sector, that's the point. You want to have, Crest or, Tide or whatever the product is. The holding company doesn't care that the consumer's not aware. Coca-Cola doesn't care that the kid on the street doesn't know that Mountain Dew is a Coke product, right? They just care that the kid wants to drink the Mountain Dew. Well, we brought that concept into the world of special events for nonprofits. And we help nonprofits by creating those things. And that's us. Those are the two things we're known by, really. And it's been quite a ride. It's been quite a ride for us.
Awesome. So speaking of rides, and I know all three of us have been on some ups, and we've been at low points building our businesses. How is it that, or what made you turn your idea into a lucrative business, or successful, should I say?
I would say for myself, it really started out of necessity. Everybody remembers the crash, 2008, 2009. I really didn't want to be a freelancer anymore. I wanted to get a job at an agency. I wanted to learn. I was an apprentice, like I said, for a little while. So I started applying to a lot of jobs. I mean, everybody was, right? I was in my mid-20s. Every job I would come into, I would make it far, but far doesn't give you a paycheck. I would get in there and they say, you know what, we're going to go this route, or we want someone with more experience. And, the situation around me was getting worse and worse. You still got to pay your rent. You got bills to pay. You got to eat. You got to travel. You got to live, right? So what I started to do was started to reach out and search for my own clientele to hold me over until I was able to land a job. And finally, I thought to myself, I remember the day I thought, you know what? I just need to kind of do this for myself instead of kind of begging or looking for something that's not going to happen. And that right there, I think that decision right there kind of led me on the pathway to where I started to look at other companies that I wanted to replicate or I thought were doing well in the field that I wanted to be in, and started to build my company in the manner, at least from the outside in, because I wasn't behind the scenes. But okay, our company does outreach like this. They're wording on their websites like that. I started kind of build the shell of the company I wanted, and then going to events, going to pitches, going to fill out. At that time, I was filling out our request for proposals, kind of growing that into the company I thought I would have, which at that point it was design and marketing, different things like that. But then the niche came into play, and what we just talked about in terms of having a niche in your company is really where you grow, where things change. So when I started using who I was as a Black millennial man, right? I started realizing that companies really wanted to speak to people of color. They really wanted to speak to diverse audiences, but a lot of the agency companies and nonprofits that we work with weren't made up of the people they were trying to reach. So our agency became more important. We started to get bought in over agencies that were much more bigger and well-known and globalized than mine was at the time, and still to this day. But we had a unique offering where, hey, we can speak to, not just, it's not a color-based thing, but hey, we can speak to girls in this country. We can speak to people of color from this city. We can speak to, different diverse background audiences, and we can speak respectfully, and we do the research, and we can create campaigns and socially driven content that doesn't disrespect the audience that you're trying to reach, and make it more authentic as well. So that became special. That became something that fit who I was as a person, myself, who my team was as individuals, and also the mission that we wanted to drive. So it became very natural, and everything that was created out of that belief system. So wherever we launched, say, a new product, a new entity, a new division to the agency, it was still based out of that core belief system, which, like you said, you're creating something that you feel the world needs, or you feel you would need, and you're kind of implementing it into your strategy of growth. And you're not going to always, whatever your strategy is or your idea are for the next year, the next 5 years, they're not going to go exactly in that manner, because the world shifts around us. Like, nobody knew in 2019 we were going to have a pandemic. But I'm telling you, there's going to be 50 million amazing ideas that come out of this pandemic, because it shift based on the actual situation that you're in, the reality of what you're in, and also the reality of your own background and your own ethos. And you merge that together to create something tangible that now is what we like to call a business, or you're now entrepreneur. You've now got a group of people together and created a company per se, and whatever way you want to do so. So that's how I was able to kind of grow from nothing per se, just an idea, to actually living in a reality where I can see our concepts, our ideas go to another city and see something we built in that city, or on that advertising campaign, or somebody speaking about it on television or something like that. And know, wow, that was all in our heads. That was all in my head. That was all on an email. That was written down on a notebook sheet of paper, but we made it into a reality.
Yeah. Steve?
That's a great story, Christian. That's a tremendous story. And mine story starts somewhat similarly, in just sheer desperation for money, need. I think my wife was 8 or 9 months pregnant at the time. And I think we, after putting down the $1,500 for 3 months for the studio apartment, had $500 left. And so just needed to get busy, and basically had an opportunity, right? So rather than a strategy, or a smart character figuring out, what are my skill sets and how should I apply them, needed money, talking to the friends. One guy connects me with another guy who says, hey, I got $9,000. I can give that to you over a 3-4 month period. You think you could clean up 15, 16 parks for us in this neighborhood in Boston? I went, yeah. Have I ever cleaned up parks? No. but I was desperate, right? So you take the money, and I converted that into a project whereby I involved a program called Model Cities to hire kids that were 14 to 17-year-old kids who were in the federal summer youth employment program, come from poverty families, needed summer jobs. So I said, okay, this is what I'll do. You give me the $9,000. I hired the kids. The federal government was paying them. Trained the kids, managed them. We're cleaning the parks up, got companies to support us, etc. So I turned this opportunity into a nice program, but it gets much bigger than that. We create a competition around it. We called it the Grime Fighter Games, right? Cleanup stuff. Think about this. Get more companies to sponsor it. And 4 or 5 years later, we're in 22 cities and states training all the programs that hire poor kids in the summer on how to do park cleanup, litter control, anti-graffiti, and other kinds of things that revolve around environmental improvement. So that starts with an opportunity. Poor as dirt, $500 left, $9,000 for 4 months to clean up parks. Yeah, but they probably had the image of me going out there with the broom myself, right? No, so created that, and then the next opportunity came because people saw that all over the newspapers, and they come and said, "Can you help us with this walkathon?" What's a walkathon? Have you never seen a walkathon? No, no. But we saw what you did with this other crazy thing. What? Maybe you could just get in, take a look at the thing. And I said, sure, I need money. So another opportunity. And so, of course, that's the beginning of the story I told you before, because we never looked back. The first time we did one of those, we boosted that field from the largest ever, I think, event in history. Had done about 500,000. We boosted it to 1.1 million, just like that, in a 6-month period. Never looked back. So but the moral of that story is really we've been blessed with opportunities that we've maximized. And that's been more important, frankly, in our success than us being strategic geniuses. No, it's not true. And let me tell you, I did well in school. You know, I'm as good as the next guy sitting down, figuring out the problems and trying to imagine what's going to happen. But the opportunity, and we devalue that. The only editorialization I want to do is I want to say that I think we're living at a time where we overvalue strategy. And starting out, we overvalue strategy, undervalue opportunity. Meaning you might not know exactly what's going on. So what? Take the opportunity, try to maximize it, see what you can make out of it. While crazy creative things happen, you know, like someone clean up the park for 9,000. Next thing you know, 5 years later, 22 cities and states, you got a major enterprise going. Who knew, right? We didn't know. Take the opportunity and go. That's us. We were opportunistic. Now, 7, 8, 9 years of that. Now you move into your strategic mode. As Christian has already done, he more rapidly moved from his opportunity mode into his strategy mode because he's living in a world where people talk about strategy. That was an advanced term, not used yet.
I wanted to co-sign on that real quick because I think people really need to kind of let that sink in, that obstacles are really opportunities. And I think a lot of times we sit there and dwell on the obstacle and not realize that a lot of people are dealing with the same obstacles, right? So when you instead frame your mind to actually get over that hump, you can now kind of position yourself or your ideas in a way to you can actually create them into a tangible business, a tangible idea. A lot of times we sit there and stew on the obstacle and say, man, I can't get over this. This is a problem, right? But like you just said, like you come up with that solution, you are now the standard for that solution. And that's what helped us. I didn't know I was coming up with a solution. I was desperate. Desperate is a key word. But it turned out that solution I created was able, they needed that.
Right.
I was the only one offering it. I became necessary. I couldn't strategize that. I wasn't a genius enough to sit back and say, you know what? They need these 10 points and we're going to make $1 million. No, it was out of desperation, but being true to who I was, being true to what I wanted to do and what I thought was needed out of that desperate mode, that if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have been as intuitive, right? And grow.
So here's the question. How did your foster care or adoption history influence your business today and who you are?
I would say it was very personal in terms of one is extremely personal and one is more my personality, right? The personal side is the name of the company when I first started it was 1226, which was my mother's birthday. My mother that had me since I was 2 days old, right, and passed away in 2005. I wanted to create something which was legacy for me. I never knew an entrepreneur in my life, never met a business owner, but I just knew it was something I wanted to do. I knew that sports was over, right? But my mother always told me growing up, you're special, you're going to be somebody special. And that may sound like everybody who has a great parent, they tell them that, but you don't realize it sticks with you. I knew that I wasn't average. I knew I needed to do something, and I knew I had this idea and I needed to see it through. So I created the company 1226. We put the logo up with the heart, had 1226 on the wall, right? But I never realized something that I use to this day, 10 years later, 10, 11, 12 years later. I would go into these meetings just myself. Remember, I didn't have a team. And I would see the people come out that had 5 people with briefcases. I'm like, man, I'm just not going to get this project. I would go in. I had 1226 on the projection screen and with the heart that looks like a broken heart. And the first question they would ask is, what does 1226 mean? Why is your logo a broken heart? I'll say, oh, this isn't a broken heart. It's actually the line in the heart if the clock was at 1226. And it's to say I'm passionate about what I do. But my mother's legacy, she passed away a couple years ago, but her legacy is in what I do. And I'm passionate and I'm going to work hard. You would see everybody in the room. Man, we love, oh man, that was the hook. That was the hook. Right? And that taught me, like, you could come up there and show me a blue dot, right? But if you have a story about it, which the name of the agency now has been Story Marketing, but you can show me anything. But if you have a story behind it, I now want to listen to what else you have to say. And I feel that you have a purpose behind what you're doing. And so that taught me to have purpose in everything I'm doing, because not all the time is it about pitching, it's about people experiencing who you are as a person and wanting to hear more about what you have to offer. Then you can go into the pitch of what you actually do as a job or what you can deliver the service, right? And your story doesn't have to be tragic, so per se, but it's just a story. It's just who you are, is what your values are, right? And then when I said the personality aspect of it is, we grew up, my brother and sister and myself grew up in a foster home where we foster other kids who were adopted into other homes. So it's about getting it done. It's about not taking no for an answer. Life was about finding a way no matter what. Like, you got to find a way to feed everybody. You got to find a way to get through issues that happen and continue. So in entrepreneurship and business, that's my personality almost to a fault. It's like there's always a way to figure something out. Especially if somebody else somewhere has done it. I don't want to hear the story that, oh, this person had this upbringing and this money and this education. They figured out a way. And so I know I can figure out a way. I got to figure out a way. It might be a different road, right? I'm still going to get to the end result that's desirable, that is able to continue the legacy and the business and the dreams moving forward.
Right. It's not about the path you take. It's about you reaching your finish line, your finish line. And that's important. Yep. What you determine your finish line is. Steve, how has your history influenced your business?
So, first of all, Christian said a lot of amazing things. And one interesting thing I want to call out, because I don't want anyone to underappreciate where he started, where he said that there was a message from his mother that he was smart, special, and destined for good or great things in this world. This is something that with all our children, my goodness, if you could plant that one tiny seed, almost regardless of what happens or has to happen, you've done something very important for that child. I had a similar experience. And then my dad died when I was 6, and my mother decided to give my brother and I up to the courts of Pennsylvania. But we had a little bit of a different, and that's, by the way, after about 3 years of what was then called bouncing around and now is called kinship care. So we did that for 3 years. And then, but when we were given up to the courts, we were placed at Girard College for Orphans in Philadelphia. So unlike a lot of the people possibly listening in, I grew up in the nation's oldest large-scale orphanage. I was there for 7 years with about 800 boys. This was back in the day. They don't even use that. They take out 4 orphans on the name of that school now. It's just Girard College, but a little bit different. So all of us were fatherless. That was mandatory. And all the mothers had to be destitute, right? Had to be living below the poverty line. So, and the school was in loco parentis, meaning they're our parent, right? They're our parent.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's an interesting way to grow up, and I want to honestly say a good way, a very good way, because in a peer society, the number one most important value, a lot of people will miss this. They won't think this through clearly. But when you're growing up with 800 people who are just like you, what's the most important value? Fairness. Fairness. If you think about it, what's the cornerstone value in business, guys? Think about it. Fairness.
Fairness.
What is this good business? I win, you lose. Is that good business? How about this? I win a little, you win too, but not as much. Is that good business? No. Business is about structuring relationships that are fair and commensurately fair. If I'm going to work for IBM, I'll get paid X, fair to me, a little company. IBM will get X plus back. Great. That's fair based on our sides. Similarly, with our employees, fairness. How do your employees want to look at you as the leader of your firm?
Mm-hmm.
They want to feel like they're in an environment where everything is perfectly fair, right? So you learn that 7 years growing up with hundreds of your peers. That's the most important thing you want. You want to be treated fairly. You want to have that in your bones. So interestingly, in my high school class, just very interestingly, all the guys from this particular environment, half of them are business owners. That's rare for high school, that 50% of the whole crew would own their own businesses. But in a way, it makes sense because you learn from a very young age how to structure everything fairly, which is a cornerstone value. And then, one other thing that's underappreciated for those of us who grew up in the system and aren't part of a caste that has money and doors flying open for them.
Right.
You learn to be scrappy. You learn to just stick with it. It's, you probably know a little bit about my sports background. It's wrestling. If it's going to be, it's up to me. I mean, there's that, a little bit of that.
Right.
Don't lose that. This crowd that we're talking with here, all of us, the people listening in, we're not going to lose that peg in the ground. If it's going to be, it's up to me. And then one interesting thing that we never think about is we're not in the glare of anyone. So in a way, our lives have a little shade to try things, experiment, move ahead without being in the glare of expectation of maybe what a wealthy family might bring to its children. We don't have that. And so we get a little more latitude because shade is a good thing early in life, right? I mean, you don't get the withering sunlight on you. You can make some mistakes. You do this, you do that. You explore. Your imagination can grow. No one telling you do this, do that. You're figuring it out for yourself.
There's a question.
Those are a couple things from how, I think our upbringing, our types of upbringing have influenced business. And then, of course, the last point I'll make is just that my firm popularized a type of fundraising that enables little people to be philanthropists. And that's kind of a big deal because I grew up the beneficiary of a philanthropist. The man who founded the orphanage was the richest man in the United States. He was the richest man in the United States, the first ever multimillionaire in American history.
Wow.
And so I got to have a good growing up because of him. And then I get to create a type of fundraising that enables someone without much money to become a philanthropist. Because in these walkathons, you ask 200 people for $100. Next thing you know, you made a $20,000 contribution, right?
Right.
And you're just, you're really, you're just a little guy. And that's a wonderful thing that Americans of modest means can now be philanthropists. So it's good that it came out of our crew, that thing came out of us.
History of
rich people.
Yeah, history of foster care. So there's an alum that actually asked a question who started a nonprofit, started a business. And her question was, because of this recession and the pandemic, and that she's in a financial crisis, should she risk herself and make her business her full-time job? She hasn't been able to find a job in her field yet, which she just graduated with her degree in social work. Should she make that leap and just hope that it'll be successful? What do you think?
So I guess my advice, without knowing the minutia of exactly her situation, I always tell people that, you know, they see business as something they see, right? I see a logo, a website, somebody getting job, doing actual work. And to me, especially when you're first starting out, to me, that's not really the business. The business is behind the scenes. So I want to see, if you have a notebook filled up this, like that, to me, that's more of a business than somebody with something that's tangible. So my answer to that question is, she has to have a piece of paper, a notebook, a Google Doc, no matter what it is, write down every aspect of your business and research it, the profit and loss, how you're going to get clients, how you're going to secure funding, whether not high level, how you're going to be able to pay your bills. Because when you're first starting out, all this is intertwined. Yep. Like, be realistic and honest with yourself. If you don't see a pathway for it, figure it out, because you don't want to be in the midst and then you have to take on things that aren't becoming of you, or struggle and need dire assistance. You know, you can answer those questions right now during a pandemic, while the world is pretty much shut down and people are not really, like Steve said, you're in the shade, right? You can sit down and YouTube University, call friends, ask for mentorship, answer every question, like you're going to pitch at Shark Tank or something, and answer all these questions, and now know, fully confident, how you're going to run your business, how it's going to sustain you for the next 3 months, 6 months, year, right? While you can do small odd jobs or get unemployment or whatever you're doing to secure your funding. I always tell people, taking that leap blind is something I think the media has made seem like that's the best route. That was a route I took, and that wasn't the smartest route. I didn't have anybody to assist me. But now that I'm able to assist others, and I have mentors, and there was a better way to do it. I actually had a job at the time. I didn't know I could save my money and build the business at the same time, and then grow it in a way that when I did leave my job, I would have been financially secure moving forward. I just kind of jumped out there, and that sounds cool and dandy, but there was a better way to do it, right? So I would ask her to, if she can't find a job, still build that business on paper, answer all the questions, look for people in her field that's done it, that are willing to help. A lot of people are willing to help if we just ask the question. We assume that people are not willing to help, or won't answer our email, or won't take that phone call. Use your resources. The three of us are resources. If that person emailed me right now and said, hey, I'm working in this field, do you have anybody? I'm going to search my Rolodex for who I know and do an email introduction. You know, take it from there. Like, that's how people operate. That's how I was able to grow, right? So I can't tell her yay or nay in terms of whether she should just go full term, but I would say put it on paper, start growing it, start learning. There's aspects to the business, no matter how smart you are, that you don't understand and don't know. Before you start a business, the reason why you want to start that business is because you're good at something, or you have a passion about something. And in business, it's not just about that something. There's other aspects to business, which are financial, strategy, marketing, legal, that we're not good at and we don't care about because we never had to think about. But when you run a business, you have to handle those things and have them on point. So you do, no matter, even if it's not fun, it doesn't have to, it's not supposed to be fun. You have to learn. I had to learn the legal aspect. I had to learn contracts, because contracts are important in our field.
Yes, it is.
About how to get paid and when to get paid and how to structure those payments. I had to learn all that stuff. That all I started because I'm creative and an artist and a designer, and hey, I'm gonna start a business and be great. But there was other aspects that I needed to get smarter in. Finances. I didn't think I was good in math, but I learned I'm good at numbers when it comes to money. So I'm able to structure those like deals and know where, how much I should pay a contractor to where we're still making money and different. But I had to learn all that, and I have it down on paper. And now I'm able to start. If my business failed tomorrow, I could restart it the next day, because I have all this stuff already put down, already strategized, mentors in place, assistants in place, and different things of that nature.
Steve.
I could not improve upon what Christian just said. I'm not even kidding. It's very hard to make me speechless, Christian, just so you're clear. So what I'm going to do, actually, I can't improve on what he said technically. So what I'm going to do is take the individual whose comment it was, and I missed seeing the name, so I apologize for that. And I'm going to take you to the jump point. And also I'll do a little, the emotional, if you survive what Christian just said, and particularly the exercises, the writing exercises, the research, the online research, the search for the mentor, all the things Christian just said, you're at jump point, right? If you're at jump point, you got to jump. I think, so the idea is this. I'll just give you two phrases that you've heard, but you won't forget them again. If you have a plan B, it's a problem in business because you're likely to go to that plan B. What happens to Christian in his life and me in my life, to Mr. Motivator, is at some point, there's no plan B. You're all in, done. And I'm going to give you one more thing you've heard. And again, then I'll zip it because, we'll move forward. But this is a great one. I just love this one. It's the 16th century. It's Cortez who came over and took Mexico, right? He ran the Aztecs out of Mexico for Spain. What did he do right after the first confrontation, military battle confrontation? Turned to his guys and said, burn the ships.
Yep, burn them.
Burn the ships. Yep. And so what does that mean? All in. You are forced to succeed now, right? If you burn the ships, there's no plan B, and you burn the escape route, you're all in. But I do want to take it back to Christian's first remarks. I don't want to be cavalier. You have to do what Christian said. Every step of it, there's online research, there's you banging out your strategy, there's mentors, there's even hanging on to that job for a while you learn. All that good. I can't improve on anything he said. But once it's go time. Burn the ships, right?
Yep.
There it is. No plan B. It's over. I'm all in. You'll do better if you do that.
Yeah. And one thing that kept coming to mind was Les Brown told me, he said, if you jump, you'll grow your wings on the way down. As scary as that is, as scary as that is,
I'm going to use that.
Right. I mean, because most people, that's the jumping off point, Steve, that you mentioned. That's where people are scared of in business. Yeah. If I take this leap, am I just going to hit the ground? No, but that growing your wings is all the learning that Christian and you mentioned, right? But you have to be willing to make that jump.
At some point, you got to go.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I heard Eddie Murphy mention that whole plan B thing in an interview with Arsenio Hall. He said, if you have a plan B, then you failed already.
Yeah. You're planning for plan A to fail.
Yeah. So like for me, there was no plan B. Now it was, okay, how many businesses can I create? But there wasn't a plan B. It was all in the same vein, all in the same lane. And it's just important. So with that being said, just think about some of those. And there was Anthony Turner. He actually, he's watching. He said, or he asked, what kept you going when you felt like giving up or you faced a setback?
Well, for me, it was two things. It was actually doing something that was in my purpose. I want to stand strong on that because a lot of people, they say, especially in the now era, entrepreneurship is very sexy. It's social media. Hey, we're grinding. We're starting our own business. I'm my own boss, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people jump into things that they feel can make money that may have made someone else money, and maybe they are making money doing it, but they're jumping into it so they can call themselves an entrepreneur, leave the job they don't like. But to me, when the going gets tough, or when you have a sleepless night, or when you're not bringing in money and you're working at what it seems like for free and you're trying to figure out something else, if I wasn't passionate and loved what I actually was doing, I would have quit. Because there was no reason. I almost quit then. I was like, man, I can't take this anymore. I feel like I'm working super hard and not getting the income, or I'm failing, or I'm defeated. Everybody's going to feel defeated once in a while. But because I was doing something that I truly was passionate about, I was truly learning and studying every 5 minutes, every ounce of the day. I was truly knew that this was my kind of purpose in terms of what I was doing. I sat there through the hard times and figured it out and asked the question, as opposed to if I was doing something like just stocks or something I'm not so passionate about, I would have quit. I'm like, there's no reason. I'm not making the money. What's the point? I'm going to leave this. Like, it was cool when I was making money, but it's not cool now, right? But I found a way through because I was actually doing something that was conducive to my passion, my purpose, my makeup is, my self-makeup in terms of the creative field. And then also leaning on the spiritual side of things. Like, I couldn't have done this without the prayer, without some nights, like, people don't want to talk about this, but some nights you get on your knees and you just look in the sky and you're like, please, I just need help. I need to figure this out. Whatever it takes, and that has been able to help me. And then lastly, I always impress upon people in making whatever you're doing in life about something that's big, greater than yourself. Like, I talked about my mother and I were very, very close. So it taught me that now she's not physically on the earth, but there was days, I use this in everything. I'm working out, I'm on the last side. I don't want to do it, but I think about her. I think about the words she said. I think about her not being around. I can push through that set. I can push through that hard night. I can push through that sad state that I might be in for a day or a couple of days and get through. And like I said before at the beginning, everybody's story doesn't have to be tragic. There's some people that have created something where, hey, I want my family to live like this, or I want to make, whatever it is, you've made a purpose that's about something greater than yourself. So when you want to give up on yourself, your mind jumps to that purpose, because it's easy to give up on ourselves, but it's harder to give up on those we love, no matter who you are. And if it's someone or something that you can make it purposeful about, you'll keep pushing through, right? As opposed to if it's just about yourself and making money and being cool, that goes out the window first. You're like, I don't care about that. I can go, whatever. I'm just going to give up, right? But when it's about something greater, it's like it gives you that extra boost to push through. And you see that in all aspects of life, from business to sports. Then how'd you hit that last shot, Michael Jordan? I was thinking about that. You know what I mean? It's about something that's greater than yourself.
It's so great talking to you guys. I have
like
this is like Chris. I'm going to crystallize some of what Christian has said from my perspective. So obviously the goal orientation is critical, right? Mm-hmm. So I come from the world of sports. So an athlete sets goals, and your needs, necessity, and goals are infused together. So, we grew up in a certain way. And so now I set my goals for a certain amount of income and a certain kind of house and a certain kind of ability to pay for my children's education, on and on, right? So you've got goals. You come out of the sports world and you be damned if you don't hit your goals, right? So that's number one, right? Goals do it and will keep you focused. What Christian describes as passion and love for what he does, I describe as mission focus, and so I've been privileged to work in businesses that all have missions caring for human beings. So that's kind of a nice thing, right? I'm not really producing the hamburgers or, the ball bearings or the specialty chemicals or, shoes. It's human services. It's hunger, homelessness, child welfare, elderly issues, teen employment, saving people in disease situations. So that gives us, wow, what a privileged thing we get to do, serve all these missions. And that gives us a passion to a degree, right? That we support all these missions. And then lastly, failure tolerance. If you have no failure tolerance, wow, I'm not sure this is the road for you. I mean, to go to the Michael Jordan episode, of course, he famously said, I'll reduce it. He said, the reason I've succeeded the most is because I failed the most, right? Mm-hmm. And, he does it in number of shots and number of game-ending shots, et cetera, like that. But he succeeded the most because he's failed the most. And there's got to be failure tolerance. If there's no failure tolerance, if you cannot get back up, this is not the great path. For people, you are going down. There is nothing you're going to do about that. And in athletics, you get to see it all the time. People lose games all the time. They get knocked on the behinds all the time. Get up, right? So the goals, the passion or mission that you're after, and the failure tolerance and failure capability to get back up, right? We know all the old saws, not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. Mm-hmm. These are all real things, because as clever as you are and as well supported as you are by your friends, your mentors, other people in the community, hey, you know, it's complicated, right? Business is complicated, conditions continually changing. That's it.
You know, it's interesting because for most of us that are speakers who build their brand and their businesses on traveling across the world and speaking in front of large crowds, when COVID hit, that killed a lot of things. And so one thing about business too is you have to be able to shift. You have to be able to shift, because I mean, if I just stayed in my, oh, well, I guess I can't travel and ain't no more conferences and I can't get in front of people, then business would have died. Right. So, but being able to say, hey, I could, whatever you're asking me, we can do it virtually. Right. And we can do it that much more better. Being able to shift in those moments, I think that's part of being an entrepreneur, is being able to get hit and maneuvering a little bit. Right. Like Will Smith said it best. He said, if you don't fail, then you don't have success without failure. That's what he says. Right. And failure is just stepping stones. They're building blocks to your success. And that's what, as an entrepreneur, you have to keep thinking that. Christian?
Well, let's take it. Let's keep the sports analogy going, because I played sports for a lot of years. I thought that was going to be my thing. Mm-hmm. Right. And it built me for what I'm doing now. Right. Because it would be insane. Every person, even if you never started a business in your life, if you watched a game or a boxing match or anything, and the guy got knocked down and walked out the ring, or he missed 3 shots in a row and then sat on the bench and said, I'm not playing anymore, everybody would go crazy and say, that guy, is he crazy? Like, what's wrong with him? Or gave up a touchdown and went to the bench and was like, take me out the game, coach. This is Randy Moss. I can't check. Right. It doesn't matter. People be like, this is crazy. But then we do it in our lives. Mm-hmm. We never circle back and think about, whoa, I get knocked down, but you know what? I got to figure a way to go back out there again in front of the same crowd, in front of the team, and figure out a way to win. And even if you lose the game, we'll talk about all these great Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, all these unimaginable star athletes in the history of our nation, right? Mm-hmm. But you think about, Muhammad Ali is not undefeated. Michael Jordan played 13 years and won 6 championships, which means there's 7 other years he didn't win anything and had to tuck his tail between his legs, right? But you know what we do? You watch film. When I play football, when we lost a game, we could lose 40-0 or 39-40. You go on that Monday and you pop that tape in, no matter how hard it is to see, no matter if you were the one that gave up the last second. And we watch that full tape and figure out, if I had just looked this way or I had done this, we might have won that game. You take that film, you study the next week coming up, and you implement those new tactics, and you win the next game, right? That's life. That's business, right? I learned that. I used to complain about not getting, we're not getting this contract. What's going on? I had to take a step back and say, watch the film. Maybe if we structured it like this, maybe if I said this, maybe if my business actually was implemented in this way, we would win the next contract instead of, woe is me, we're losing. What's going on here? You know, I had to watch the film, because the failure was actually, like you said, a stepping block. We won more contracts now because I do things differently than what happened when I lost, or not so much lost, but you didn't get those other ones, right? Mm-hmm. So it helped me that instead of looking at it as something that ruined my life or didn't give me the income or we lost, it's actually blessed me, and we're able to do better. I'm able to be a better business person, even if somebody gets over on you. They got over on me because the contract wasn't right. You know what I mean? Right. I now realize we have to implement these payment schedules in the contract, but I had to learn that from getting hurt from a company disappearing or something, like whatever happened back in the day, but you have had that determination that Steve talked about. And if I didn't learn from the mistakes I had made or that I had not known about, because you don't know what you don't know. Right. And then I was able to implement. So you have to be able to have that, like you said, I love that failure tolerance. You do have to have that. And You have to be honest with yourself. I'm a big proponent of being honest with yourself. That is, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? So maybe entrepreneurship isn't for someone. That doesn't make them negative. There's a lot of people who work in jobs that make way more money than any entrepreneur I know. It's about knowing who you are. If that's something that doesn't benefit your life, or that's not the lifestyle you want to live, or you don't want to take those risks, that's okay. But you're honest with yourself. And if you feel like you want to take those risks and you have a year or two or whatever long you give yourself, that's okay too. Just be honest with yourself. Don't do something because it's the cool thing to do, or because somebody's getting on your nerves at work, or you don't want to get out this business. You're stubborn. It's not leading anywhere in terms of you haven't shifted enough, or it's not necessary value-wise, and you won't shift because you want to do things your way, right? We're in COVID now. If you do events, you can't do events in every city because events aren't happening in every city, but you figured out a way to shift as opposed to being kind of stubborn and still, and like you said, sitting back and being like, well, I'm not going to do anything because we can't do events and I have an event company. I guess we're dead in the water.
Right.
Work that way.
Got to shift. So here's a two-part question. The first part of that is being financial savvy required to be an entrepreneur? And the second part to that is, how do you become a millionaire and how do you stay a millionaire? Now, you can put that at any income level you want, right? So, who wants to take that?
I'll let you go, Steve.
Am I go first? So, do you have to be financially savvy? And the other part of the question is, how do you become a millionaire and stay a millionaire? Okay. So the answer to the first part of the question is yes, you will have to become financially savvy. I mean, it's business, right? So, I mean, business ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about adding value, right? Structuring products, focusing on markets, selling into markets and individuals for a value proposition that yields a profit. And so, in fact, you will become rapidly financially savvy because you will be unable to move an inch or do anything without a certain amount of financial savviness. So I'm going to move quickly to the other part of it. And in terms of how one becomes financially savvy, there are many ways. Certainly people can do that a little bit as undergrads and a little bit more in MBAs, but there's nothing like being in business itself to teach you about money and how it works, how it moves, and how you got to play with it and use it in order to sustain yourself in a profitable way. If you're not profitable, you're going to be out at some point, right? You're out. Okay, so leave that alone, all right? So there's got to be profit, however it happens. On achieving and sustaining a seven-figure income, boy, you got to be two things. Number one, your value proposition has to be pretty intense. You need to know, what are you doing for the other party, and what are you selling at what price point? And then, are you staying on top of it so much so that people want that business over and over and over again, or that you can grow that market and reach into it? But it's probably not going to happen automatically for more than a short amount of time. So you've got to be adding value so that people want to put that money on the table for whatever it is you're doing or offering. And then if you're going to resell into that group, the relationship management and the continued adding of value onto that product have to be intense, and or you're going to expand your market and be selling into more and more and more people. But what I have seen in all my decades in business is that if you're not committed, it's meaning you might have an automatic run where you get onto something good or hot, and for 4, 5, 6 years, it's almost like you're barely doing any marketing and selling, and things are just going, and there's repeat business, and there's new customers with no work from you. That's it. I've never seen a business go for more than 4 to 6 years on that kind of slick ride. We do nothing. We just make money, and we're making more money every year. It's a high touch, intensive game that you got to be on top of. And if you want to have that kind of growth and sustained high income, you got to come to play over and over and over again. It will be very good to build a team to support you. Otherwise, you get a little worn out. You can get a little worn out. I've been around a long time, right? So you don't want to get worn out there. You got to have that team in place too at some point, right? If your idea is build a company. So I'll leave it there. That's a big question. That's a big 1-2 question there. I'll leave it there. We'll let Christian weigh in.
No, I totally agree with you. I would say to the first question, do you have to be financially savvy? Heck yeah. But you don't have to start that way. Don't let that scare you. I was a person, still feel like I'm a person. If you ask me to count to 20, I'm gonna start having to use my fingers. 10 plus 10, I don't know math. Math is hard for me, right? It always was. But now I feel like a genius with numbers because I had to figure out a way to make the business profitable. I had to start looking at the numbers, and I guess I operate more in common sense. It started to turn out that numbers wasn't as scary as I thought it was. Numbers were just common sense. If we sell this for this much at this amount of time and spend this much on it, this is the profit that's being made, and I need to make this much money. So I need to make sure that the profit reaches the income that can sustain me to have a healthy life, right? So it became more common sense than the scariness of numbers and finance. It wasn't as scary, and still to this day, not as scary as I used to think it was, because it's basically common sense. And what I didn't know, I learned, or I asked questions, and people that sit you down that's in this field, they actually talk to you, like financial CPA. They ask, hey, if you have to pay your taxes like this, and it starts to make sense. It's not as scary. It's like, whoa, that makes sense. And now you're financially savvy. I'm someone who sometimes says things that surprise myself, because I remember 13 years ago, 12 years ago, I didn't know anything about this. And people look, oh, that's right. I have to structure my business where the numbers. And I realized, oh, I didn't understand it because I'm some math genius. I understood it because I've been operating in business, doing things. I've made mistakes, asked questions, and had to push through to be able to make a profit and sustain. Now, the millionaire part of it, I really, one of my close friends who's been in business for a lot of years, he always talks about the millionaire side of things because it's really just pure numbers, right? He always talks about, okay, somebody set a goal, like Steve said way at the beginning, you set a goal. Say your goal is, I want my business to be profitable, $1 million in profit this year. So now you take a step back, you break that into 12 months. We have to make X amount per month to reach 1 million in profit, right? Not in gross, in net, in profit, right? So we have to make this amount. We know we're paying out this much. This equals 1 million. Now you break that down even further. We have to make X amount per contract in order to equal that out, or per sale, or whatever it is, to equal that to that monthly number, right? So now you're developing a strategy when you're breaking this down. Okay, we can't take on this type of client because that will never get us to this number. We have to only take on these type of clients, but these type of clients, they require to be taken to lunch, and an outreach and a marketing plan and a pitch deck that's 14 pages long that says, like, you're building it out from backwards, from the front back. And now every day that you're waking up is actually strategic instead of just, we're just going to do business. We're going to get clients. You actually have a strategy that now, even if they like the cliches Steve talked about that turn out to be reality. When you shoot for the moon, you're still amongst the stars. You might not hit 1 million that year, but you might get 700K that you would have only made 100K if you weren't doing it that way. And then I want everyone to really stand on what he said about being proactive and reactive. Well, proactive instead of reactive. That was my problem for a lot of years in business. We would hit these months where I just felt like I was laying in the bed and getting contracts. And people would say, hey, you're a Christian, right? We want to work with. I was like, oh man, we're going to make $50 million this year. And then it slows down. And that would happen every year. You're like, oh man, I thought, but then 2 of them got canceled. The other one got delayed. And you're like, what's going on? And it took for someone to tell me, you know what? It's good that you just get business existing, or that people said your name in an elevator somewhere, but that's reactive. You're reacting to something happening, and that's not sustainable. You have to, at the same time, be proactive, where you have emails going out, or you're at events. You put together a whole strategy where you're always touching somebody. So when the reactive work slows down, the proactive work is still bubbling. Somebody now answers that email, or now says, you know what? let's bring you in for another meeting. You have to have both going on at the same time, meaning you're very strategic, you're very determined, and you keep that going so that, you know, your business just can't sustain off of being hot. You actually have a strategy going. And these strategies, they're very, maybe not the common sense isn't the phrase I'm looking for, but you notice that you develop a strategy based on necessity, based on you goal setting. It's not just sitting at a table and saying, okay, now it's strategy time and doing something. No, you actually set goals and you work your every way of your business out to reach the goal that you set.
Man, I hate this part because I think we still got so many questions. We got so much great content between the three of us, and it's not even me. You two are wizards in this space, right? Wizards in this space. But our time is short. And so I want to think, I mean, how do people get in touch with you if they have questions or some resources?
Christian?
I would say if you're on Instagram, shoot me a direct message. Christian Benjamin is just my name, as you see it on the screen. Christian Benjamin. Send me a message. We can take it from there. If you're not on social media, then my email cb@christianbenjamin.com. I have an email to answer it. As somebody who told me a couple years ago, they're very well-known, important. They said, no, I have a phone and an email to answer it. And I always thought, well, if they're that important doing that, I always got to, so it's social media, Christian Benjamin, my email, cb@christianbenjamin. That's how you get in touch with me.
All right.
Okay, for me, email me sbeyondalillo@beyondalillo.com. So that means you have to spell Beyondalillo correctly twice.
Right.
Okay, sbeyondalillo@beyondalillo.com. And if you would like to link in with me, you can link in with me, because the way that platform works, as you know, is if we do link in together, then each of our full contact information, including a phone number in many cases, will be available. So either link in with me or email me directly, and that's it. Looking forward to chatting with some of you.
All right. Well, again,
we gotta get together, man.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Again, thank you, gentlemen. It's been great. For everybody that's tuned in, that's been hanging with us for the last technically 3 hours, I definitely want to bring up the brains behind this whole event, and that is the whole planning crew. This has been fun. Shalita O'Neill. Again, the brainchild of APNC and how many years? Susan M. Finger, who's also been great. Jamie, Carolyn, also Chantel Randolph. Oh man, I'm telling you, you talk about putting in the hours here, and of course, Carmen. I don't think we would be where we are if it wasn't for our sister Carmen, who has been just emphatic. And let me not forget Ivory.
Where'd she go?
Where did Ivory go?
I don't know.
Ivory. Anyway.
Ivory.
Yes, and Ivory.
There she is.
Bennett. Ivory Bennett. This is your planning committee. These are the people that have been working diligently for the last couple months to make sure we brought you quality content. And again, we would not be where we are if it wasn't for you. Thank you for everybody that tuned in today. I would say I would be remiss if I didn't have our fearless leader say a few words. Shalene?
Hey y'all, how you doing? This has been wow, this has been an awesome day. And for us to like you said earlier, Mo, to be able to shift right virtually because of all that's going on in the world with COVID. And so I'm just thankful for all of you. I know Ashley's not here, or Kim haven't signed on as well. But look, y'all, I tell y'all all the time, for everybody's watching, when you're talking about going after a vision or trying to create change in the world, you cannot do it by yourself. You cannot do it by yourself. And we've had panelists earlier today. I want to thank them, Dr. Lopez, Charity, Ashley, Steve V. Oh, I got to catch up with you, man. I missed my mentor. Christian. Look, y'all really dropped some gems today, but one of the things too, you can see the notes that I took today too. But what I heard of the many things was reputation. You know, and the reputation is really important. So watch how you present yourself to the world and the decisions that you make, because that's going to influence the network that you're able to build. And so I just want to, I thank everybody here. CB. Okay, the person that was behind the scenes, making sure the videos came on, who designed the videos, along with Ashley. Like, okay, that's her right there. Chantel, reaching out to the speakers, making sure everybody know where to be, the panelists know where they're at. Jamie, behind the scenes all the time, making sure things are coming together. When I drop the ball, Susan, talking about the money. Okay, how are we going to engage some folks to come together so that we can keep the work of the foundation going? Ivory, working with Kim to make sure our members have what they need. Listen, it's all about the team, and so I'm so grateful for y'all. So I'll shut up now, but stay tuned for greatness. So what's going to happen next year for the in-person APNC as well.
Listen, please do not please take advantage. Take advantage of becoming an FCN member. Again, you can go to fcnfoundation.org, be a member. This is how we connect. This is how we help each other out. Again, there's some wonderful opportunities and content on there for members. So it's free.
And I got to say this, Jamal, I got to say something to everybody.
Go ahead.
We're a network for a reason. The word network is there for a reason. And the reason is we think that people who've been in challenging situations come together to do amazing things. We've done this. Fostering Change Network Foundation in various forms has been around for about, I don't even know how many years. But, it takes work. But every year we're growing, and every year we're linking up, and we're giving each other more support, more resources. And we're a network for a reason. And we've got talents that have come from foster care, from challenging situations, from having to make it. We believe we're the leaders of the future. So we just really want everybody to think about that. Join your family, join your tribe, join your network today.
And again, for everyone that has tuned in today, I hope you gleaned some information that touched you. That way you can move forward in your dreams and aspirations. It's been a joy to be your MC today and your moderator for the panels. I always have fun doing this. This is just, you can say, well, you can't say, can you do it for free? And I do it, but that's beside the point. That's beside the point. But this is what we do. We give the information that is needed to be given. And that's what we're here for. We're here to give you exactly what you need, and we're here to be a support. So with that being said, I think it's time to sign off.
Oh, I'm sad. Okay.
This is going to be, you'll be able to find this again. It's recorded. If you want to go back through, again, go to the YouTube channel. It's going to be on the Facebook page. So if you want to rewatch, share it. Share it with your networks. That's the only way this information will get out, is if we share it with our personal networks as well. This is not just for youth who had foster care experience, even though that's what we focus on. This information could be used all across different platforms. So we ask you, share it alike. Again, don't forget the text, foster support 44321, and let us continue to support youth in the programs that we have during this time of COVID. So, hey, this is your man, Mr. Motivator. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the flip.
See y'all.
Bye.